Chapter 4:14. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled. It wasn't just a slight curl of her lips, but a real laugh. It was said that a rich man in the empire once said that if anyone could make General Situ smile, he would be willing to give them a villa in the empire's capital. However, no one had been able to achieve this. Even Enoch was dazzled by this smile. In the next second, the cold tip of the knife was pressed against his neck. Gu Xingyin stood behind him and whispered in his ear, "Take a guess. If I continue like this, will I be able to take your life?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly felt the person in front of her tremble slightly. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. The man suddenly burst into laughter. Fortunately, there weren't many people around, otherwise, they would have attracted a lot of attention. Enoch didn't care about the knife at his neck at all and turned around. "You won't kill me," he said with certainty. If she really wanted to take his life, this woman wouldn't waste time talking to him. Gu Xingyin put the knife back at her waist. Since the man saw through her intentions, she couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. The man was in a very good mood. He said to Gu Xingyin, "I'll show you the real fun of Storm Star. These." He glanced at the commercial street not far away with a disdainful expression. "They can only be used to coax little girls." Gu Xingyin agreed. Who was Situ Jean? Shopping on the commercial street really didn't suit her. Enoch took Gu Xingyin to a private hover car. "Very cool." Gu Xingyin looked up and down and commented. Enoch's smile deepened. "Of course, I designed this myself." The two of them chatted casually. Most of the time, it was Enoch talking to himself. Gu Xingyin listened and occasionally made a sound to indicate that he was listening. "I'm still a bit confused. Jean, you actually followed me out so easily. You even allowed me to call you Jean." Enoch didn't say this out loud. Gu Xingyin glanced at him with a hint of a smile in her eyes. "Firstly, you are very strong. So strong that even an SSS expert like me is fearful. Secondly, you're very handsome. You fit my taste." The hover car that was traveling at a high speed made a huge drift in the air, scaring the cars behind it. Just as the car owner was about to stick his head out and curse, the car in front of him had already disappeared. Enoch looked at the expressionless woman beside him in disbelief. Was he being flirted with? His gaze was so obvious that Gu Xingyin frowned. "Don't show such a stupid look." If Enoch's subordinates were here to hear this, their eyeballs would probably fall out. Their boss looked very kind, but only they knew how scary he could be when he was ruthless. The last person who dared to scold him had long become nourishment from Mother Earth. However, when Enoch heard this, he wasn't angry. Instead, his brows relaxed and he smiled happily. What a coincidence. Jean, you fit my taste too. Why don't we try it together? He tested him half-jokingly but received an affirmative reply. Okay. The car once again glided in the air in a big arc. Enoch felt that something must be wrong today. He looked at the woman beside him and knew that something was wrong. There was an old saying on Blue Planet, if something is abnormal, it must be a demon. Chapter 4:15. However, even if it was abnormal, Enoch still felt that he had fallen for her. From the first time he saw this woman, he felt that the two of them should belong to each other. No one of the same sex or opposite sex had ever made him feel this way. He suddenly thought of a question and stared at Gu Xingyin with burning eyes. "Do you treat every man who meets your standards like this?" He did not show it on his face, but his heart was already boiling with murderous intent. If her answer was yes, he would not let any of those men go. Gu Xingyin looked at him strangely. "In your eyes, do I, Situ Jean, look like someone who is not picky?" Enoch was relieved and looked at her with a smile. "No, you have good taste. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fallen for me." Gu Xingyin thought to herself. If it was the real Situ Jean, she really wouldn't have fallen for you. Situ Jin's life goal was to become the first marshal of the empire. As for the relationship between a man and a woman, it was never in her consideration. Enoch brought her to a place. It was a very tall building. With the current construction level, buildings with less than 100 floors were not considered tall. However, the height of this building was one of the highest in the entire Storm Star. Enoch familiarly took out a black crystal card and swiped it into one of the card slots. The door opened automatically, and the two of them went straight to the highest point. Put this on. Enoch took out a strange-looking mask from the space button and handed it to Gu Xingyin. He also put on one for himself. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Although space technology was quite advanced now and space storage technology had been conquered by technology, it was still too expensive. The space button was still a privilege that only a few people had. However, in the next moment, her attention was attracted by something else. Enoch put on the mask in front of her. In an instant, his aura changed. She could still see him standing there without any obstruction, but the figure in front of her suddenly became blurred. His aura also became somewhat unpredictable. Even someone familiar with him would not be able to recognize him. Gu Xingyin's voice suddenly became serious. This is the latest result of the military's research, an anti-reconnaissance mask. I remember that this technology is forbidden to be leaked. Enoch smiled. My Jean, now is not the time to talk about business. Let's go in. He pushed the door open and Gu Xingyin stepped in. She felt that she had entered another world. This was a huge space. There was a huge square in the middle. There were countless seats around it seemed to be for people to rest. Whether it was the square or the seats, they were all made of special materials. Everything seemed to be switched between reality and illusion. She could see the traffic below and the people coming and going. Above her head was a clear sky with white clouds. Gu Xingyin saw that there were already many people sitting inside, like herself and Enoch, wearing anti-reconnaissance masks. Enoch seemed to be very famous here. As soon as he came in, many people stood up, but their eyes were not friendly. Here, powerhouses from all over the galaxy have gathered. How can people who come to Storm Star not see this place? Enoch said softly behind her. Chapter 4:16. Gu Xingyin followed Enoch in. Fire, you actually brought someone here today? A man's voice rang out beside them. Enoch nodded. This is my girlfriend. He frowned and was thinking about how to address her. Gu Xingyin said calmly, Gu Xingyin. Enoch looked at her in confusion. As far as he knew, Situ Jean didn't have any relatives or friends with the surname Gu. Also, Enoch felt that the name Gu Xingyin was very familiar. The man who had spoken earlier suddenly became surprised. Girlfriend? Oh my God. Fire, you actually have a girlfriend? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? Enoch smiled and said, yes, I just met her today. The man who had spoken earlier was speechless. The woman you just met today is your girlfriend. He glanced at Gu Xingyin with a strange look in his eyes. Could she have been forced by the fire? He carefully looked at Gu Xingyin, but under the influence of the anti-detection mask, he couldn't see anything other than her figure. He thought for a moment and said, that woman, Hu, will also be here today. You have to be careful, beautiful lady. Gu Xingyin almost instantly got some information from his words. She looked at Enoch with a faint smile and said, Hu, huh? Her voice wasn't as sweet as an ordinary woman's voice. Instead, it was slightly hoarse. With such a high pitch, it was as if there was a small hook in it that made people's hearts itch. Enoch's heart softened when he heard that. He smiled and said, she's not an important person. You know, people as outstanding as your man are always very popular. The man beside them was speechless. She was still so shameless. At this moment, someone from the group of people who had stood up earlier stood up. Fire, we're ready. Didn't you say that you were bringing a partner over? What do you mean by bringing a woman over today? The man's tone was full of malice. He pointed at Gu Xingyin and said, don't tell me this is your partner? His tone was filled with disdain for Gu Xingyin. Humph. Enoch's expression turned cold. The man who spoke seemed to have sensed something. He quickly retracted his hand, but he was still a step too late. The hand that was previously pointing at Gu Shengyin was now dripping with blood. If I hear you speak rudely again, the next time, my target will be. Enoch's voice was cold as he pointed at his neck. That person's expression changed greatly, but he didn't dare to say anything and retreated. Gu Shengyin looked at Enoch questioningly. Enoch understood the meaning she wanted to express and said with a smile, "There are a few reckless fellows who have agreed to challenge me today." There were 6 of them. Perhaps they felt that 6 against 1 was too shameless, so they specifically stated that I could bring 1 companion. He emphasized the word 1. Gu Shengyin nodded in understanding. So it's 6 against 2? The customs of the Storm Star are really different from ours. Enoch understood the meaning of her words. A trace of a smile flashed through his eyes. He asked cooperatively, "How is it different?" Gu Shengyin said lightly, "Since it's a competition, of course it's 1 against 1. It doesn't matter if you're not strong enough. You have to keep your face." The people on the opposite side listened to them echoing one another. Their hearts were full of shame and anger, but in the end, they didn't dare to say that they were going to challenge Enoch 1 against 1. Chapter 4:17. Gu Shengyin immediately lost interest in this competition. Although she hadn't seen Enoch's strength with her own eyes, he was undoubtedly at the top level if he could make Sita Jean, an SSS rank expert, feel afraid. Those people dared to challenge him, so they were obviously not weak. However, Gu Shengyin lowered her eyes. A martial artist without guts was still lacking something. Enoch clearly felt her change and said with a smile, "What's wrong? You're not interested anymore? That won't do. I dragged you here to support me. We still have to fight 2 against 6. Was he asking her to fight? Gu Shengyin looked at Enoch strangely in disbelief. You want me to fight? She asked with an inexplicable expression. Can you afford the appearance fee? Enoch's smile didn't change. Of course I can't, so I'll pay with my body. Gu Shengyin. Why is my lover in this world so shameless? Suddenly, the door that had been closed opened again. A fiery red figure walked in. Although her face couldn't be seen, the tight red clothes showed off her voluptuous and seductive figure. Even if one didn't look at her face, one could tell that she was a stunner just by looking at her figure. The woman looked around the field and her gaze landed on Enoch. Then, she walked towards him. Fire, I heard that you were going to fight with someone today, so I rushed over. I'm not late, am I? The stunner's voice was especially seductive. When she spoke, it was like the thickest honey emitting a pure and beautiful fragrance, seducing people. Gu Shengyin almost immediately guessed who it was. Sure enough, in the next second, a gloating voice sounded from the other side. Huahu, to think that you're so concerned about me. I brought a girlfriend today. Huahu heard this and looked in Gu Shengyin's direction. Although she couldn't see the other party's face, Gu Shengyin could feel her gaze lingering on her. Huahu looked at Enoch in disbelief. Fire? Is this your girlfriend? You have a girlfriend? Enoch nodded. Although he didn't like Firefox, he didn't hate her either. As you can see, I'm already taken. Don't waste your time on me. Hearing his words, Huahu's voice suddenly became sharp. Impossible, I don't believe it. This woman has never appeared before. You also said before that you have no interest in sex. You must be annoyed by me and deliberately found someone to lie to me, right? Gu Shengyin stood at the side and did not say anything. She only looked at Enoch. Her meaning was obvious. You provoked a rotten peach blossom, so you have to deal with it yourself. Enoch's voice was very serious. Firefox, I remember that the two of us were never close. If you talk like that, my girlfriend will misunderstand. He continued, you're not important enough for me to find someone to put you off. Don't think too much about it. It is a fact that I have a girlfriend and I like her very much. In order to avoid suspicion, you'd better stay away from me in the future. Otherwise, if you make my girlfriend unhappy, it's hard to say what I'll do. These words could be regarded as heart-wrenching. It turned out that the lovers in this world were not only thick-skinned but also sharp-tongued. Gu Shengyin thought so. The woman called Firefox seemed to be unable to bear Enoch's words. She took several steps back and then looked at Gu Shengyin. I want to duel with you. Chapter 4:18. Hua Hu looked at Gu Shengyin next to Enoch and said in a loud voice, I'll duel with you. If you lose, you should know your place and leave Hua Hu on your own initiative. How about it? Gu Shengyin didn't expect that Hua Hu would burn her while she was watching the play. Before she could speak, Enoch got angry. Hua Hu, do you know what you're talking about? I don't like you. This matter has nothing to do with her. Don't drag others into this. Although no one knew Gu Shengyin's strength better than him, Enoch didn't want his woman to suffer any unexpected disaster because of him. He didn't suppress his strength in anger, and a huge pressure rushed straight to Hua Hu. Hua Hu only felt that her body was heavy, and she knew that she had angered the man. At this time, the best thing to do was to retreat. But she looked at the woman who was standing beside him calmly, and felt a burst of unwillingness in her heart. Hua Hu was a mysterious and powerful man. Since the first time she came to this place, she had never been defeated. She didn't hide her love for him. She pursued him for 3 years and put down all her reservations, but he didn't pity her at all. How could such an unknown woman easily make Hua Hu admit their relationship? She forcibly endured the pressure from the man, but her eyes were fixed on Gu Shengyin. How about it? Do you dare to duel with me? Gu Shengyin reached out to stop Enoch's action and walked to Hua Hu. She was taller than the other party, and when she spoke, she bowed her head slightly, naturally with a hint of condescension. Why should I bet my man with another woman? She said in a proud tone, if I win, this man will be mine. Even if I'm just a waste of physique, this man will only be mine. Enoch looked at the arrogant woman with fiery eyes, and his heart was burning. That's it. She would never know that the way she talked was really damn attractive. He was extremely glad that both of them were wearing masks today. No one else could see her like this. Hua Hu was a little dumbfounded. She thought she was arrogant enough, but she didn't expect that there would be a woman more arrogant than her. She subconsciously looked at the other party, wanting to see his reaction when he heard this. Enoch's reaction was, no reaction at all. However, at this time, there was no reaction, which meant that he had tacitly agreed to this sentence. Gu Shengyin continued, but I can accept your challenge. Of course, for a simple duel, I don't need you to bet anything. In a while, Fire and I will have a battle. You can watch from the side. When the battle is over, you can decide whether or not you want to duel with me. She had her own pride. Since she had been challenged, even if the other party was being unreasonable, she had to accept the challenge. However, even though she knew that she could win, she was not willing to use her man as a wager. This was a kind of trampling on Enoch and the unstable relationship between the two of them. Okay. Hua Hu replied in a daze. In fact, she already knew that this duel was unnecessary. Whatever he wanted, he would never be able to get it. Gu Shengyin walked back to Enoch and looked at the people who had been left behind for a long time. Everyone, didn't you say that you want to duel? Let's make it quick. Chapter 4:19. That group of people had been waiting impatiently for a long time. Previously, when they saw Hua Hu coming, they thought that she would be able to cause some trouble for Fire. Who would have thought that the woman would be so useless? The leader said with a grim smile, Fire, we admit that you are very strong, but your woman is not necessarily so. Since you want to die with a burden, we won't be polite to you. Enoch's lips curled into a smile. Well, let's wait and see. A quarter of an hour later, 6 more figures appeared on the ground. Gu Shengyin looked at them indifferently. Do you want to continue? The leader of the other side looked at Gu Shengyin as if he was looking at a demon. He originally thought that Fire was strong enough. Who would have thought that a woman he casually found would be so strong? The leader's heart was filled with bitterness. How could a woman who could catch the eye of such a powerful and abnormal guy like Fire really be weak? We admit defeat. The leader got up and said to Enoch, I will send someone to deliver the things I promised. These people may have felt that they no longer had the face to stay here, so after saying that, they walked out one by one. Gu Shengyin looked at Huahu again. The woman was standing there silently at the moment, and no one knew what she was thinking. I said that you can wait until I finish the competition before you decide whether the previous agreement still counts. Gu Shengyin looked at her. Huahu smiled sadly, thank you for leaving me some leeway so that I won't be so humiliated. What was the point of competing? Everyone present had seen Gu Shengyin's strength. Huahu was not belittling herself. In her hands, she might not even have the chance to fight back. She shook her head and followed them out. Enoch pulled Gu Shengyin to a seat and sat down. Well, you can tell me now, what is this so-called really fun place for? Gu Shengyin looked at the people coming to the huge square. Enoch began to talk to her slowly. It turned out that this place was a very special place on Storm Star. No one knew who created it. It was special in several ways. Firstly, it was extremely secretive. Only those who had reached a rank and above were qualified to know and enter. Secondly, those who came here were not allowed to reveal their identity, whether it was their own identity or the identity of others. Third, this place can be used to settle all kinds of personal grudges, regardless of life or death. In the interstellar era, the physique of humans had been greatly improved. It was divided into 6 grades, S, A, B, C, D, and E. It was already extremely rare to find an A-class expert, and S-class experts were even rarer. Of course, someone like Situ Jean who had an SSS extreme physique was an existence that was hard to come by in 100 years. Gu Shengyin fell silent as she listened. In fact, there were similar places in the Galaxy Empire. However, they were only similar and couldn't reach this level. At the end of the day, under the rule of the royal family, some things were not so convenient. Storm Star was different. Although there was a behemoth like the Storm Chamber of Commerce, the Storm Chamber of Commerce was not the ruler of the planet. Without a single ruler, it was possible for such a place to exist. Sure enough, Gu Shengyin saw many people walking in and out. Many people even walked out horizontally. The people in this place are not just limited to Storm Star, right? Chapter 420. Enoch was shocked by her sharpness and nodded approvingly. Of course, Storm Star doesn't have so many level A experts. Gu Shengyin snorted. A place that even I don't know about, the concealment measures are indeed good. Enoch laughed. You don't know because you don't like it at all, right? Enoch had only brought her here to broaden her horizons. There was no point in wasting an entire afternoon's date here. Soon, the two of them got up and left. The person who had struck up a conversation with the two of them walked out after seeing this. Seeing him get into the car, Gu Shengyin was a little surprised. She had thought that the two of them only knew each other, but now it seemed that it was not as simple as that. Sure enough, the person took off his mask as soon as he got into the car. He had the same red hair, but his face was different from Enoch's flamboyant handsome face. In comparison, his face could only be considered delicate. The red-haired man greeted Enoch as his elder brother before addressing Gu Shengyin as his sister-in-law with a bright smile. Gu Shengyin contacted the system after seeing the man. I already know Enoch's identity. The person the Empire has been looking for, right? This arrogant system. She did not know why, but when she met Enoch, it actually played mysterious and asked her to guess Enoch's identity herself. Sure enough, after hearing Gu Shengyin's words, the system's reluctant voice sounded. Host, you guessed right. It had wanted to whet the host's curiosity. Enoch also took off the mask on his face and looked at Gu Shengyin helplessly. I wanted to tell him to be careful, but who knew that this kid would move so quickly? Gu Shengyin also took off her mask at the same time. While the red-haired man was stunned, she smiled at Enoch. Should I say, nice to meet you? Red Devil. The #1 space pirate the Empire had been looking for decades, Red Devil. Red Devil had never shown his face, but his brother was his spokesperson outside. Enoch sighed. I didn't expect that after hiding my identity for so many years, I would fall here. But it's no big deal. I was going to tell you anyway. He had a feeling that he would spend the rest of his life with this woman. If that was the case, he would have to tell her his identity sooner or later. At this moment, the red-haired man, who had been in a daze ever since Gu Xingyin took off her mask, finally came back to his senses. Fuck. Aren't you that Empire's citoyen? The general of the Empire was his brother's woman. It was his sister-in-law. The red-haired man felt that he should close his eyes and sleep a little longer. Enoch looked at his younger brother with some disappointment. What citoyen? Call her sister-in-law. This kid was too useless. The red-haired man came to his senses and deeply felt that his elder brother was indeed his elder brother. He raised his signature Enoch smile and said to Gu Xingyin, "Hello, sister-in-law. I'm Huan Chu, Enoch." He pointed at Enoch, my half-brother. So they had different fathers. Gu Xingyin understood why their names were so different. She had been wondering why the two brothers' surnames were different. She nodded reservedly. "Hello, Huan Chu." Huan Chu felt that he was still in a dream. He was actually sitting in the same car as the Empire's General citoyen, and he even called her sister-in-law. If Lily knew about this, would he still have to worry about not succeeding in his confession? His beautiful imagination was interrupted by Enoch. "Put away your little thoughts. You're not allowed to tell anyone about Ajin's identity and my matters." Chapter 421. Huan Chu's head drooped. Got it. What was the most depressing thing in the world? It was knowing a shocking secret but not being able to share it with others. Huan Chu felt that it was better if he didn't know. Gu Xingyin was amused by his dejected look. Next, Enoch brought Gu Xingyin around Tempest Planet. Huan Chu had already tactfully asked his brother to find a place to drop him off in the car. He was happy to stay, but looking at his brother's expression. TSK, Huan Chu had no doubt that if he dared to stay, he would be skinned alive by his brother when he got home. So by the end of the day, Gu Xingyin had seen all the characteristics of Storm Star and gained a boyfriend. Enoch sat in the car and gave Gu Xingyin a flying kiss without hesitation. He smiled and said, "Remember my number." Gu Xingyin raised her hand, indicating that she got it. "Admiral." Gu Xingyin's two guards saw their behavior and were in disbelief. "Is there a problem?" Gu Xingyin asked. Of course there was. The two guards' hearts were like cats scratching an itch. They really wanted to ask, "Sir, what did you do this afternoon? Have you really confirmed your relationship? How far have you gone?" But under Gu Xingyin's gaze, the two could only put on a serious face and emphasize, "There is no problem." The emissary of the Galaxy Empire stayed on Storm Star for 7 days. After 7 days, Gu Xingyin would return to the Galaxy Empire with the Star Hawk. The day before leaving, Gu Xingyin deliberately took a day out to accompany her lover. Everyone, including Enoch, felt that the relationship between the two of them was really incredible. He was sure that he liked this woman very much. No, it should be said that he loved her. He loved this woman so much that he wouldn't hesitate to die for her. She was the same. Who was citoyen? For so many years, he had never heard of any rumors about the iron-blooded female general who was famous throughout the galaxy. Yet, she actually got together with him so easily. Moreover, Enoch could feel that her feelings for him were real. But this was very strange. He had only known her for 7 days. So why did he have such deep feelings that seemed to have settled down over centuries? When they parted, he hugged her and told her his feelings with a smile. Hearing this, Gu Xingyin's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. She couldn't tell her lover that she and he had indeed been together for countless centuries. He could only say ambiguously, "Maybe the two of us were deeply in love in our previous lives. When we died, we promised that we wouldn't be separated in the next life." Enoch was surprised that Gu Xingyin would say such girlish words. He thought that Gu Xingyin was just saying sweet nothings. He smiled and replied, "I think so too. If that's the case, I'm very greedy." Not only do I want us to stay together in this life, I also want us to stay together forever. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up. We will. The next day, Gu Xingyin, who was dressed in a neat military uniform, boarded the battleship under the personal escort of the person in charge of the Storm Chamber of Commerce. To her surprise, Enoch didn't send her off. Gu Xingyin suppressed the faint sense of loss in her heart and waved her hand to order, set sail. However, reporting to the admiral, we've caught an outlaw trying to board the battleship. Chapter 422. Gu Xingyin looked at the red-haired man who was smiling lazily and didn't resist at all. She was so angry that she almost laughed. She waved her hand and dismissed everyone. Only the two of them were left in the command room. Why are you here? Gu Xingyin looked at him with a headache. As a battleship of the Violent Lion Legion, the Star Hawk's defense was naturally top-notch. However, no matter how heaven-defying the defense was, it was very difficult to stop an extremely strong SSS warrior. Enoch winked at her. I realized that I missed you after not seeing you for half a day. Thinking about how long it would take for me to not see you, I feel very sad. Gu Xingyin. There's a communication video. Enoch looked hurt. Something as cold as a communication video can't comfort my desolate heart because I can't see my lover. Gu Xingyin. She took a deep breath and suppressed the ridicule that was about to come out of her mouth. In the end, she could only say coldly, since you're already here, I won't say anything else. However, your actions must be monitored by the Star Hawk. The destructive power of an extremely strong SSS warrior was simply immeasurable. Even if Gu Xingyin trusted her lover, as a commander, she had to give her subordinates an explanation. Enoch looked at the woman who had a cold expression but was actually compromising for him, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Whether a person had you in their heart didn't depend on what they said to you, but on how much they were willing to compromise for you. Gu Xingyin called her subordinates in and pointed at Enoch. This is Enoch, my friend. It was a misunderstanding that he sneaked onto the Star Hawk. In the future, you just need to remind him which places he can't casually go. The officers who didn't know what was going on all nodded in agreement. Only the two guards who had seen Enoch before had strange expressions on their faces. Her Excellency actually brought her man onto the Star Hawk. Was she going back to the capital to meet his parents? Her Excellency had already developed to this stage with him? I'm so curious. The two men looked calm on the surface, but in their hearts, they were frantically thinking. They were secretly delighted that they were the only one who was sober when everyone else was drunk. At the same time, they felt uncomfortable because they knew a big secret but couldn't share it. At this moment, the vice captain of Star Hawk hurriedly walked over and leaned over to say something to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin nodded and said to everyone, there's nothing else. Everyone, go back to your posts. Enoch knew that she had something to do, so he followed the crowd and left. Gu Xingyin clicked on a communication device, and on the screen was a man in white casual clothes. Your Highness the First Prince. Gu Xingyin bowed. General Situ, I just received news that someone is planning to ambush the Star Hawk. Hurry up and order your men to change the course. The First Prince seemed rather anxious. Of course he was anxious. His mother was the first wife of the Emperor and had died early. The current Empress was the Emperor's second wife, and her son, the second prince, was only 1 year younger than him. Although he was the first in line to inherit the throne, the second prince's mother's family was very powerful, and he also had the support of the military. Thus, his position as the successor wasn't very stable. The Situ family was his supporter, but their power was mainly in the political arena. Looking at the current situation in the galaxy, those with real power in the military were the big shots. It wasn't easy for the Situ family to produce an anomaly, Situ Jin, who was already the commander of 3 trump card armies at such a young age. Now, there seemed to be hope for him to advance further and become the #1 person in the military. If Situ Jin could ascend the throne, the first prince's position as the successor would be as stable as a mountain. Naturally, no one was more concerned about Situ Jin's safety than the first prince. Chapter 423. Gu Xingyin's expression turned solemn. She asked, "Your Highness, is this news true?" The eldest prince nodded. "This is a spy that I've planted very deeply. There's no mistake about it." Seeing that Gu Xingyin was still deep in thought, he panicked. "General Situ, I can confirm that this news is true. I won't lie to you. My feelings for you." Gu Xingyin lifted her head and said sternly, "Your Highness, please be careful with your words." The eldest prince didn't say anything. He only looked at Gu Xingyin in the video with a melancholic gaze. He liked this woman. Regardless of whether it was for emotional or political reasons, Situ Jean was the woman he liked the most. Even the Situ family was very happy to see their daughter become the princess consort. However, Situ Jean wasn't willing. In the Situ family, no one could order Situ Jean around. If she didn't want to do something, no one could force her to do it. Gu Xingyin wasn't doubting the authenticity of the news. She was communicating with the system to let it verify whether this was true or not. In the super technological dimension, the system's advantage wasn't as obvious as before. It took almost 2 minutes before it found out what Gu Xingyin wanted. "There are a few battleships hidden around the Star Eagle battleship that the host is in," the eldest prince was still urging. "General Situ, don't hesitate anymore. It'll be too late later." Gu Xingyin suddenly lifted her head, her eyes bright. "No, it's already too late." She suddenly turned on the emergency communication device in her hand. At the same time, all the soldiers on the Star Eagle battleship heard her voice. "Star Eagle battleship, activate level 1 defense. Get ready for battle." The efficiency of an ace troop was extremely high. Almost at the instant they heard the commander's words, everyone reacted. From afar, a layer of blurry light started to appear on the surface of the battleship that was speeding through the galaxy. It was as if a light shield was surrounding the Star Eagle battleship. This was the defensive energy shield of the Star Eagle battleship. Just as the energy shield was raised, a blinding white light suddenly appeared in the darkness and smashed onto the Star Hawk. Looking at the energy shield successfully blocking this fierce attack on the display screen, many people showed lingering fear. If His Excellency had been a second slower, this super-powerful laser cannon would have landed on the Star Hawk. Even if the Star Hawk was made of the best materials in the Imperium, half of the operating system would be destroyed after being hit by such a blow. It was as if in an instant, more than 10 battleships had appeared around the originally empty Star Hawk. Without any warning, several light cannons shot toward the Star Hawk. This time, the soldiers on the Star Hawk knew what to do even without Gu Xingyin saying anything. Gu Xingyin glanced at it and calmly accepted the eldest prince's call, which had rung countless times. The eldest prince's anxious face appeared in midair. When he saw Gu Xingyin, he asked, "What happened over there?" Gu Xingyin replied, "It's nothing serious. Your Highness is right. Someone attacked the Star Eagle battleship just now." The eldest prince wanted to say more, but when he saw her calm expression, he felt that it shouldn't be a big problem and didn't ask further. When he received the specific news 1 day later, the eldest prince, who was elegantly sipping his tea, almost couldn't maintain his bearing as a member of the royal family and spat out the tea in his mouth. Being ambushed by 13 level 1 battleships was still considered nothing serious. Chapter 424. Enoch broke through the door and entered. His expression was serious. "Can the Star Hawk hold on?" Gu Xingyin nodded hesitantly. As the command ship of the Violent Lion Army, the Star Hawk's defense is top-notch in the entire galaxy. However, Enoch hit the nail on the head. However, this is a command ship, not a battleship. Without a doubt, the Star Hawk's defense was undeniable. It was hard to find another ship in the entire galaxy that was on par with it. However, in terms of attack power, it was not even comparable to the first-level battleships outside. This meant that they could only passively take a beating and would not be able to launch an effective counterattack. They had to see if they could hold on until reinforcements arrived. The only consolation was that the Star Hawk had sufficient energy. Gu Xingyin estimated the route and said, "We considered the secret at that time. The route that Star Hawk took was very remote. We have already left Storm Planet for 1 day and 1 night, and there are still 2 days before we reach the nearest destination. This meant that even if the other party received the request for reinforcements, they would only meet 1 day later. Under normal circumstances, the Star Hawk can hold on for 3 days. However, Gu Xingyin's expression was serious. The other party could mobilize 13 first-level battleships. It was impossible that they did not have any backup plans. As expected, on the display screen, the laser cannons on the sides of 2 battleships suddenly changed. 2 faint blue rays of light slowly appeared. Gu Xingyin's expression changed. They even have this. The Empire's SS-level secret, the super-strong plasma beam that the military had just developed a month ago. The military had not even released this weapon. Gu Xingyin could imagine that regardless of whether the attack was successful or not, there would be a huge purge in the military. The other party did not care about the consequences in order to take her life. Gu Xingyin knew the power of the super-strong plasma beam. Among the trump cards developed by the military, its lethality was in the top 3. Enoch saw her expression and knew that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong?" "What is that?" Gu Xingyin sneered and pointed at the screen. "It's a weapon that even you, the Red Devils, don't know about. It's the result of the military's recent research. Without a doubt, not only is there a mole in my Star Hawk, but there are also many people in the military who want my life." Gu Xingyin already knew who the mole on Star Hawk was. There were probably more than 1 or 2 of them in the military. Gu Xingyin asked the system, and sure enough, Qi Lin had been rescued. The military court is a bunch of good-for-nothings. With so many people watching, it's known as the Iron Wall of the Empire, but they still let a key suspect be rescued. Gu Xingyin scolded. As the 2 of them spoke, even though the Star Hawk tried its best to dodge, there were still many attacks that landed on the ship. The vice-captain's voice came in with a grave expression. "Admiral, the enemy's attack power is beyond our imagination. At this rate, the Star Hawk can only last for 10 hours. Gu Xingyi nodded to indicate that he understood and turned off the communication. "What do you plan to do?" Enoch asked. "It's not that easy to take my life." Gu Xingyin turned to look at Enoch with bright eyes. "Enoch, are you willing to have a real adventure with me?" Enoch loved her confident look no matter what. He smiled and said, "Of course." To be able to have a life-and-death adventure with her, just thinking about it made his blood boil. Chapter 425. In one of the 13 battleships that surrounded the Star Hawk, a man with an aquiline nose looked at the Star Hawk on the screen and laughed coldly. "Situ Jean, today is the day you die." As long as she died, he would be the greatest contributor to Master. He would wait for Master in the future. The man with the aquiline nose was so agitated that his eyes turned red. It was as if he could see his infinitely beautiful future. He didn't notice that there were some small changes inside the powerful energy shield of the Star Hawk. "General, you can't take this risk." After knowing Gu Xingyin's plan, a few of her trusted subordinates tried to persuade her. "We will go. You stay in the Star Hawk." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "The Star Hawk isn't the safest place now. Trust me." She looked determined, and there was a convincing sense of irrationality in her words. No one could say anything against her. "Are you ready?" she asked the others. Reporting to the general, "We have already made all the preparations." The few of them spoke in unison. Gu Xingyin looked at them one by one. These people were all top-notch experts in the Violent Lion Legion. Their physiques were undoubtedly S-grade existences. Only someone with such a strong physique would be able to withstand the pressure later on. "Good. All of you, prepare yourselves. I will give the order later. I hope that we can successfully meet in the imperial capital." After everyone left, only Enoch and Gu Xingyin remained. Gu Xingyin turned on her communication device and recorded an emotional video. "Your Majesty, I am Situ Jean. When you see this video, I might have successfully found a way to survive, or I might have already left this world." Enoch was shocked at first, then he understood. He revealed a strange smile as if he didn't expect the iron-blooded General Situ to know how to flirt. Furthermore, from the looks of it, she was very familiar with it. After Gu Xingyin finished recording and clicked to send the video, she saw Enoch's expression. She didn't feel embarrassed and said with a teasing tone, "What's the matter? I'm just playing a little trick. What's with your expression? Could it be that you think our military only knows how to charge forward?" She had purposely sent that video to the emperor so that he would feel a thorn in his heart after watching it. Since some people in the military dared to do such a thing, they should be prepared to bear the consequences. No. Enoch couldn't help but laugh. Suddenly, he walked forward and fiercely held her waist. Without any explanation, he kissed her. Gu Xingyin froze for a moment, then reached out and hugged his waist, deepening the kiss. After a long time, Enoch finally let go and pressed his forehead against hers. "You have to be careful," Gu Xingyin said in a low voice. "Don't worry. I'll be fine. You have to be careful too." They all knew that the person who did this was actually very risky. Out of the 8 of them, only a few of them would be able to fulfill the promise of meeting in the imperial capital. Enoch gave her a final hug and walked out without looking back. Gu Xingyin also walked in that direction. She lay down in the cabin and closed her eyes. What's going on? The hook-nosed man's expression froze. He saw the energy shield of the Star Hawk suddenly flicker. This wasn't normal. Zoom in on the video. Chapter 426. The man with the aquiline nose looked at the video carefully, and his face turned green. He clearly saw the energy shield on Star Hawk close for a moment. Because it was too fast, it only flashed for a moment. The moment the energy shield was shut down, 8 mini-mechs were ejected out of the shield. The speed at that moment was close to the speed of light. It was no wonder they didn't see it. "Sir, what should we do? Should we chase after them?" someone asked carefully. "Close to the speed of light. Even if the mechas bore most of the pressure, the remaining pressure isn't something an ordinary person can withstand," the man with the aquiline nose said coldly. "Situ Jin is most likely among these mechas." But the subordinate who spoke earlier looked troubled. "There are 8 different directions. We can't determine which one to chase. Once we split up, we won't be able to break through Star Hawk's defense." Crack. The man with the aquiline nose crushed the cup in his hand. Damn Situ Jin. He didn't expect Situ Jin to be willing to take such a huge risk. Although these mechas managed to escape for the time being, the universe was filled with dangers. In order to survive safely, not only did they need to be strong enough, they also needed to be lucky enough. Damn it. The man with the aquiline nose was troubled. He was hesitant. If Situ Jin was among these mechas, it would be best for him to send a battleship in every direction to chase after her. But what if this was just a smokescreen, and Situ Jin was actually still on the Star Hawk? Without 8 battleships and 5 first-level battleships, it would be impossible for them to break through Star Hawk's defense. "Contact Master for me." The man with the aquiline nose still couldn't make up his mind. If he made the wrong decision in the end, he was afraid that the anger of the higher-ups would fall on him. Although it would make him seem useless if he let Master make the decision, at least he wouldn't have to bear the risk. It had to be said that Gu Xingyin's prediction was right. She was betting on her luck. She bet that the people surrounding her weren't bold enough. She won the bet. By the time the man with the aquiline nose contacted Master and made the decision, they would have enough time to hide themselves. When Gu Xingyin opened her eyes again, she found herself wandering in space. His body was a little sore, and even his bones cracked when he moved. Other than that, there wasn't much of a problem. Gu Xingyin concluded that the others should be able to withstand this level of pressure. As long as they were not discovered by the pursuers or were unlucky enough to encounter a black hole, there should not be much of a problem. She looked around and carefully observed her surroundings before driving in a certain direction. She didn't dare to turn on her communicator because she was afraid that the other party would activate detection and lock onto her communicator number. If that was the case, opening the communication channel would be no different from exposing himself to them. Fortunately, she could still roughly identify her direction. If she walked in that direction, she wouldn't deviate too much. When the first prince received the news, it was already noon the next day. He put down the teacup in his hand and said sternly, "What did you say?" "The Star Hawk has been besieged by the universe's terrifying forces, and we've lost contact with General Situ." Chapter 427. The messenger lowered his head and said carefully, "This is the latest news. We've only lost contact with General Situ, but there's no bad news," the first prince said in a low voice. "Search. Mobilize all our forces and find General Situ at all costs." The messenger hurriedly replied, "His Majesty and the Situ family have also received the news. It said that the second prince is also searching." The first prince's gaze turned cold. Father and the Situ family were fine, but the second prince probably didn't want a living Situ Jean. "We must find her before the second prince does." "Yes." The subordinate also knew how important General Situ was to his side, so he immediately accepted the order and left. On the fourth day, when the Star Eagle successfully returned to the Galaxy Empire, the news could no longer be hidden. The news that the general of the Empire had been ambushed and no one knew if she was alive or dead quickly spread throughout the Empire. The entire galaxy was shaken. "Damn it. The news is already out, but we still haven't found Situ Jean." In a luxurious room, a handsome man with a gloomy expression was cursing fiercely. He looked at the people kneeling below and was furious. "A bunch of trash. 13 first-class warships. It's enough to destroy a small planet. You can't even deal with Situ Jean. Get out of here. Continue searching. Your Highness, please calm down." A gentle voice sounded, and someone handed a cup of hot tea to the man. The second prince was very annoyed and wasn't in the mood to drink tea. He raised his hand and swept the tea to the ground. Some of it even splashed onto the skirt of the person who came. The person didn't mind and only said gently, "Your Highness, there's no need to be anxious. There's still no news, right? Situ Jean is still drifting in some corner. She might have already died in space. You can't say for sure." The person who spoke had a gentle face and a gentle expression. It was Qi Lin, who had been sent to the military court by Gu Xingyin. The man in front of her was the one who had secretly rescued Qi Lin. He was the second-in-line successor of the Empire, the second prince. She comforted him gently, but the second prince didn't appreciate it and only glared at her angrily. "It's all your fault, woman. What kind of rotten idea did you come up with? You asked me to mobilize 13 first-level warships to ambush that woman, Situ Jean. You swore that you would succeed, but what happened in the end? Now, Father is already suspecting me. There aren't many people who can use the super-strong plasma beam. Even if I don't get implicated this time, I will lose half of my wings." The second prince felt his heart ache when he thought of this. It was not easy to arrange a force in the army. The forces that he could command now were almost all relying on the forces of his mother's family. This time, he would definitely suffer heavy losses. "Your Highness, please forgive me. I never thought that Situ Jean would be so cunning." Facing the furious second prince, Qi Lin could only kneel and beg for forgiveness. She lowered her head as she spoke, and her eyes were filled with disdain and mockery. How could such an idiot be the second prince of the Empire? It would be great if he could really become the emperor of the Star River Empire. With such an emperor around, he would be able to destroy the empire on his own. She was wearing a light pink dress today. When she lowered her head, most of the skin on her neck and back was exposed. It was white and flawless. The second prince looked down and didn't know why, but he suddenly felt his mouth go dry. He only felt that the milky white skin was so alluring. The second prince had never restrained himself when he wanted a woman. Chapter 428. He reached out and pulled her up. Qi Lin stumbled and fell into his arms. So fragrant. The second prince took a deep sniff at Qi Lin's neck and praised. Qi Lin did not say anything. She only glanced at the second prince as if she wanted to say something. Her meaning was obvious. The second prince's heart melted at this look. He only felt an impulse spread from his lower abdomen to his entire body. He raised his hand and picked her up by the waist. The two of them walked to the back and instantly rolled together. When the second prince's subordinate came to report the news, he heard some unspeakable sounds inside. He sighed and resigned himself to his fate and left. His master was working. He should not disturb him. Gu Shengyin did not know how long she had been drifting in the galaxy. Fortunately, she had the system, so she could find out some things. When she first woke up, the system could not be contacted for some reason. It took a long time before it reappeared. Fortunately, the system told her that she had chosen the right direction. System, can you find out about the other people? Also, how long will it take for me to reach the Empire? Gu Shengyin asked. The system checked for a while. Among the 8 people who came out with the host, 5 of them are still alive. 2 of them are close to the host. Based on the current speed, it will take half a month to reach the Empire. Gu Shengyin's heart sank. There were only 5 people whose vital signs could be detected, which meant that 2 of them had met with mishap. Her heart suddenly tightened. Who are those 2 people? Can you find out? Although she knew that the chances of her lover being among them were very low, she was still panicking. The system checked for a while. According to the strength of their vital signs, the 2 who died should be S-class elites. The host's lover is not among them. Gu Shengyin's heart calmed down a little. As long as nothing happened, with Enoch's strength, reaching the Empire safely was not a big problem. However, if they still needed half a month to reach the Empire, she did not know what those people would do. System, can you avoid the others and send a distress signal to the Siddhu family? At this time, Gu Shengyin did not dare to trust anyone except for the Siddhu family that she could control. The system said, let me try. After a while, the system spoke, it's very difficult to do. There's a risk of exposure. None of the people looking for the host have revealed their identities. I can notify the Siddhu clan, but it is beyond the technology of this plane to block all information about the host. It was exposed not because it was discovered by the enemy, but because it was afraid of being discovered by the laws of this world. Gu Shengyin said, forget it, I'll go by myself. Mission number 1, if she was discovered by the world law, there would only be one consequence for her, being forcefully expelled. Then everything she had done before would have been in vain. The system had never mentioned any punishment for failing a mission. However, Gu Shengyin's very existence was to complete missions. Even if the system did not care about success or failure, she could not bear to fail. How's the quest target doing? Gu Shengyin asked. The system told him about Qi Lin's connection with the second prince and attached another big piece of news. She actually. Gu Shengyin sneered. She even said that she admires the admiral of the Imperium. What does she think of her mother by doing this? Chapter 429. The Empire's General Situ had disappeared for half a month. The military was already in an uproar. The second prince's faction believed that with the current search conditions, there was no news after half a month. Not even a single clue could be found, so it was basically confirmed that she was dead. The first prince and the Situ family were adamant that they could not jump to conclusions before there were results. Actually, they were arguing because of one thing, power. As the commander of the Violent Lion Legion, Situ Jin's position was undoubtedly very important. Once her death was confirmed, the Violent Lion Legion would definitely need a new leader. This was a good thing for the second prince, but it was a terrible nightmare for the first prince and the Situ clan behind him. Now, as long as Situ Jin's death was not confirmed, the first prince would have to delay. As long as Situ Jin was around, no one could replace her position as the commander of the Violent Lion Legion. Another 2 days passed. 3 of the people who had escaped with Gu Shengyin had already returned to the Empire. 2 of them were confirmed dead. Boss, the man standing by the window suddenly turned his head. How is it? The person who came to report the news was silent. Enoch's expression dimmed. There's still no news, right? The person nodded with difficulty. Enoch looked up and said calmly, you can leave. continue to search. As long as there's no news, continue to search. Yes. After the person left, Enoch raised his right hand to cover his face, as if he was running away from something. You'll definitely be fine. You're Situ Jean. A low sigh sounded in the empty room. After another 3 days, the other 2 people were found, but there was no news of Situ Jean. The second prince's faction used this opportunity to spread rumors that Situ Jean had died in the uninhabited galaxy. At the same time, they contacted the military to pressure them, saying that the 3 trump card legions could not be without a commander. They requested the emperor to remove Situ Jean from her position as the commander of the Violent Lion Legion. The emperor's heart wavered. After all, the empire's trump card legions could not be without a commander. No matter how the first prince's faction argued, the emperor still gave a decree in the end. 3 days later, the Violent Lion Legion's vice commander, Francis, would be awarded the position of commander. The emperor would personally hold an award ceremony. What was Gu Shengyin doing now? System, how much longer do you need? Gu Shengyin asked anxiously. The system replied, about 3 more days. Originally, the 2 of them had followed the shortest route, which would take them half a month to return to the star field where the Galaxy Empire was located. However, Gu Shengyin's luck was off the charts. She had encountered a once-in-a-thousand-years meteorite flow and had no choice but to change locations to avoid it. This exchange dragged on for quite some time. When Gu Shengyin heard that it would be 3 days, she finally felt relieved. She took out a bottle of nutrient fluid for herself. Even if an SSS elite could go days without food, she still had to ensure that her body had enough strength to deal with any unexpected situations. However, the system quickly added, "Host, I want to remind you of something. As there has been no news of you for many days, the Emperor of the Galaxy Empire has decided on the successor of the tyrannical Lion Legion. The awards ceremony will be held in 3 days. Gu Shengyin, system, find me the fastest and shortest route." Chapter 430. 3 days later. The Empire's Glory Plaza. Lieutenant General Francis was a middle-aged man with sharp eyebrows. His expression was solemn as he stood there in his military uniform. He thought that he would never have the chance to become a Legion commander in this life. Although he worshipped his superior and felt sorry for her, at this moment, it was undeniable that Lieutenant General Francis's joy was greater than the regret of his superior's early death. However, many of the Violent Lion Legion's officers didn't look too good. As a Legion commander, Situ Jean was undoubtedly a success. She had led this trump card legion to countless victories and was the goddess in the hearts of all the soldiers and officers of the Violent Lion Legion. However, today, the position of the goddess would be replaced by another person. Even if that person was the lieutenant general they worshipped, these people still couldn't accept it. The Violent Lion Legion is the glory of the Empire. The Emperor began to stand on the platform and read out a lengthy line. Colonel Shannon raised his head. The sun was a little bright today and the sunlight was very dazzling. Even tears almost came out. He didn't listen to the Emperor's beautiful words that were obviously embellished by countless clerks. He thought in his heart, if only the Admiral could appear here right now. She would always be the commander of the Violent Lion Legion in his heart. There were many people who had the same thoughts as Shannon, and some of them even had red eyes. They didn't believe that the Admiral had died, but today's award ceremony meant that the Empire had indirectly admitted the Admiral's death. Next, I will announce that Lieutenant General Francis will succeed. The Emperor's speech was coming to an end. The main event had arrived. Shannon collected his thoughts and witnessed the arrival of this moment with all the soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion. "Wait!" A familiar voice rang out. It wasn't loud, but it accurately reached everyone's ears. Violent Lion Legion. The Emperor didn't finish his words when he suddenly stopped. Everyone turned to look behind them. At the entrance of the plaza, a figure stood there quietly. She was wearing the uniform of the Violent Lion Legion. Her knee-length dark green military windbreaker fluttered in the wind, and the epaulets on her shoulders shone brightly. Gu Shengyin walked towards them step by step. The soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion parted to make way for her and saluted her silently. Gu Shengyin walked all the way to the center and gave a standard military salute to the emperor, who seemed to be staring at her in shock. Your Majesty, Violent Lion Legion's Legion Commander, Situ Jin, reporting for duty. The emperor came back to his senses and smiled. It is a great fortune for our empire that General Situ has returned safely. Gu Shengyin looked around and asked, seemingly puzzled, I wonder what this is? Did I miss something big? The emperor was speechless. Gu Shengyin had asked that on purpose. She, Situ Jin, had worked so hard for the empire for so many years. She had only disappeared for less than a month before she was declared dead. If she didn't annoy this emperor, she wouldn't be happy. The emperor squeezed out a smile and said gently, It's nothing big. The military saw that you, the Legion commander, had disappeared for many days, so they decided to choose an acting Legion commander to temporarily take over your duties. Gu Shengyin had returned, so the emperor naturally couldn't say things like, We thought you had met with a mishap. Gu Shengyin made an "oh" sound and said calmly, Since I'm back, there's no need to trouble Lieutenant General Francis. After she finished speaking, she turned around and saluted the countless soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion behind her. Thank you for your hard work during this period of time. Chapter 431. When Gu Shengyin woke up the next morning, the first thing she thought of was, what a pity about the red wine last night. I specially prepared it for you. The man behind her exposed his bare arm and wrapped it around her waist. Enoch enjoyed the feeling of skin contact with his lover very much. He half closed his eyes and kissed Gu Shengyin's face. It seems that I was too soft-hearted to let you go last night. You actually still have the mind to think about this. Gu Shengyin snorted in her heart, soft-hearted? You said it as if the man who had sex for most of the night was not you. She pushed away the man on her body and got up to go into the bathroom. When she came out of the shower, a certain man was half leaning on the bed and looking at her. He was not wearing clothes, and the quilt was hanging loosely on his waist. From Gu Shengyin's angle, she could see the smooth and beautiful lines of his muscles. Gu Shengyin praised, Your abs are very good. Enoch showed a bitter expression, You threw me away after using me. You didn't even have time to be intimate in the morning. Gu Shengyin rolled her eyes in her heart. She did not want to pay attention to this man who was too immersed in his role. She neatly changed her clothes, leaned over the man's face and kissed him heavily, Little beauty, wait for me to come back. I will pamper you. After saying this, she pushed the door open and walked out in the man's eyes. She still had a lot of business to do today. The general, who had survived the disaster, went straight into the palace to see the emperor. She did not say a word of nonsense. When she saw the emperor, she directly took out several documents from her space button. Your Majesty, these are some of the things I found. You may be in the mood to take a look. Gu Shengyin pointed out. It was about the attack this time, about the things that the second prince did in private, about the malignant tumors in the military department, and about the second prince's new favorite, Qi Lin, who was said to be very favored. Most of them were found out by Gu Shengyin under the system's instructions. A small number of things were done in secret, and the system directly gave the results to her. After Gu Shengyin handed the evidence to the emperor, she walked out. The emperor was not an incompetent person. When he saw these things, he naturally knew what to do. As expected, the emperor acted quickly. The next day, many people from the 3 legions were summoned by the emperor. At night, among the officers who were dismissed, there was 1 lieutenant general, 2 major generals, 10 lieutenant colonels, and several other soldiers. On the 3rd day, the royal guards arrived at the second prince's palace and forcefully took away his most favored lover. The entire palace was placed under house arrest. On the 4th day, the second prince was stripped of his qualification as the second successor. Before these things were done, there was not the slightest bit of news in the palace. Therefore, when His Majesty's swift and decisive actions were announced, the entire upper class of the empire was shaken, and the people were even more confused. What exactly happened? After this incident, the entire empire was jittery for a few months. Everyone was in danger. Everyone wanted to be as low-key as possible. They were afraid that if His Majesty was unhappy one day, he would take his anger out on them. Your emperor's methods are quite impressive. The Federation will have to avoid the Empire's sharp edge for the next 1,000 years. Enoch held a wine glass and commented lightly. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Of course. Those old fellows in the Federation, in the name of democracy and freedom, are busy fighting for power every day. They are not even unified internally. How can they be a match for our empire? Chapter 432. Gu Xingyin went to the prison to see Qi Lin. This time, she was not in the military's prison, but the royal family's special prison for important prisoners. Those who entered this place would never be able to leave. Generally, those who entered this place had no future to speak of. It was conceivable that the guards would not spend too much effort on them. At least, when Gu Xingyin came in, Qi Lin's appearance was quite miserable. Her light purple dress was covered in dark stains. There was her own blood here, as well as the dust on the ground. Hearing the voice, Qi Lin only came back to her senses after a long while. She stared at Gu Xingyin for a long time before realizing who she was. After realizing who it was, Qi Lin's eyes finally regained some color. She used all the remaining strength in her body and threw herself in front of Gu Xingyin through the transparent metal door made of special material. General, Gu Xingyin signaled the person behind her to open the door. The person hesitated for a moment. Gu Xingyin said calmly, "Don't worry. If I let a woman like this escape, Situ Jin would have lived for nothing." The system had already checked that Qi Lin did not have anything on her that could pose a threat. The royal prison was also heavily guarded. Even if Qi Lin had wings, she would not be able to escape. The guard smiled. "I'm not afraid that this woman will escape. I'm just afraid that this person is cunning and will accidentally hurt the general." As he spoke, he opened the door and steeled his heart to leave. He stood guard at the only exit not far away. Qi Lin had been staring here. When she saw the door open, she threw herself at Gu Xingyin. How could Gu Xingyin let her touch her? With a slight movement of her feet, Qi Lin missed and fell to the ground. Qi Lin smiled bitterly and didn't say much. She didn't even have the strength to get up. She just crawled on the ground and begged Gu Xingyin, General, please save me, save me." Gu Xingyin looked at her and said slowly, "You know best what you have done. Qi Lin. Even if you die 10,000 times, it won't be enough." Qi Lin cried bitterly, "I'm really wrong. Please save me. Otherwise, you can tell them to let me die." "Let me die quickly too." Gu Xingyin was a little surprised. She had only heard that there were all kinds of cruel punishments in the royal prison of darkness. It was said that it would make people wish they were dead. Originally, she thought it was an exaggeration. Seeing Qi Lin like this, she didn't expect it to be true. Qi Lin had been with Situ Jin for many years, so Gu Xingyin knew what kind of person he was. If she hadn't been tortured to a certain extent, she definitely wouldn't have become like this. The most tragic thing was that, just as she said, she couldn't even die. Even if she bit her tongue immediately, the device monitoring her vital signs 24 hours a day would immediately alert the police. With the current medical technology, a spray tube could solve the problem, not to mention other methods. Gu Xingyin came here to solve a question. "Qi Lin, there are some things I don't understand," she said directly. Qi Lin didn't even raise her head. "If you can solve my questions, I can suggest to His Majesty to let you die quickly," Gu Xingyin said. Qi Lin responded this time, "Ask me. I'll answer as long as I can. After you were saved by the second prince, you betrayed the Star Hawk and caused us to be ambushed. I can understand that. Maybe you have a grudge. But I don't understand. Your father passed away long ago, and your mother raised you. You also grew up in the Empire. What made you willing to become a pawn of the Federation in the Empire?" Chapter 433. Hearing that, Qi Lin fell silent. Gu Xingyin did not rush her. She just stood there quietly and waited. After a while, Qi Lin sneered. Mother? Her voice was filled with endless hatred. If it weren't for my mother, I might not hate your Star River Empire so much. When my father was still alive, they often quarreled. My mother was very strong. She did not allow my father to say anything good about the Federation. She even hated me, a daughter born in the Federation. I still don't understand. Since the two of them have such different thoughts, why did they get together in the first place? Why did she give birth to me? After my father died, she became even more abnormal. She was not sad about my father's death at all. She especially hated me, a Federation citizen. On the surface, I grew up normally. However, who knows what kind of life I led. During the day, I would wear bright clothes to school. When I returned home, what awaited me was endless curses and corporal punishment. She was a person of status, so she could not have any stains on her. In front of outsiders, we were very close. But in private, we could not wait for each other to die. Qi Lin's eyes were cold. Every time she hit me, I hated the Empire more. Later, when I found out the truth about my father's death, I hated that I could not let all the people of the Empire die. For me, the invitation from the Federation's intelligence agency was like a lamp. It let me know what to do in the future. Gu Xingyin stood there quietly and listened to her. She knew that everything that happened here had been monitored for 2 years. Where is the organization you are in? What other people are there? Qi Lin smiled bitterly. How could someone like me know about this kind of thing? Every time, I was asked to go to a different place to accept the mission left behind by the higher-ups. After she finished, Qi Lin looked at Gu Xingyin expectantly. General, I have told you everything I know. Gu Xingyin nodded. I will bring it up with His Majesty. Qi Lin glanced at her gratefully. Gu Xingyin looked at Qi Lin with pity. Qi Lin was a woman tortured by hatred. She could have chosen to stay away from that sick family after she grew up, do whatever she wanted to do, and live a peaceful life. Unfortunately, she had chosen a path of no return. The next day, Gu Xingyin received the news that Qi Lin had been secretly executed. At this point, this world's mission regarding the supporting female lead Qi Lin was completed. Qi Lin's last words were also taken seriously by the emperor. As a ruler, he couldn't tolerate the existence of such an underground organization in his empire. After a thorough investigation, the results were shocking. Even the military and the upper echelons of the political world had spies from other forces. The entire empire had gone through a bloodbath this year. In the history of the empire, this year's turmoil was called the Great Purge. However, none of this had much to do with Gu Xingyin. As a staunch member of the royal family, she would never be implicated. She brought Enoch back to the Situ family. There was no doubt that it was a huge shock to the entire family. Situ Jin, the most promising member of the younger generation of the Situ family, was in love? And the other party was a nameless man. Although he was very handsome, no matter how handsome a man was, if he didn't have the ability to hug a goddess like Situ Jin, he would probably be taught a lesson by the men of the empire. Chapter 434. In the guest courtyard of the Situ family, Enoch looked at the unfriendly Situ family members in front of him and smiled innocently. Of course, he knew what they were here for. Gu Xingyin was not here. This kind of thing was not suitable for her to appear. If Enoch could not deal with these people himself, he would never be able to get the Situ family's approval. 2 hours later. The Situ clan's men, who were full of energy and confidence and wanted to teach a certain arrogant brat a lesson, were all bruised and swollen. They limped out of Enoch's courtyard while supporting each other. You really didn't hold back, Gu Xingyin said. Enoch snorted coldly. These guys want to separate me and my wife. How can I not give them a good beating? Plus, I guess this is the only time I have a chance to give them a good beating. When the two of them officially established their relationship in the future, these people would be his brothers-in-law and there would be no reason for him to beat them up. Gu Xingyin glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. This stingy man. In a situation where everyone in the empire was not optimistic, Enoch relied on his own ability to make the Situ family relent. The Situ family leader personally announced the good news of the two of them getting engaged. Less than an hour after the Situ family leader announced the engagement, Enoch's name was at the top of the Star Web's Most Wanted to Kill list. Many of the Empire's citizens even expressed that they could not accept their goddess marrying a nameless man. "Look, everyone thinks you're not good enough for me." Gu Xingyin sat on the chair in front of the window with a book open on her lap. She had taken off her handsome military uniform and was wearing loose and casual home clothes, which was rare. The sun shone on her body, making her look casual and lazy. Enoch saw the teasing look in his eyes and snorted. He bent down and picked her up easily. "Whether I'm good enough for you or not isn't decided by others." His low breathing brushed against her ear. Feeling the change in the man's body, Gu Xingyin glanced at him coldly. "Enough is enough." Enoch chuckled. "Don't you like it?" He showed a resentful and sad expression at the right time. "Or, do you only like me in bed and don't recognize me when we get off the bed?" Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was too immersed in the role and raised his eyebrows. "Well said." She stretched out her right hand and gently lifted the man's chin. "I think you are handsome and extraordinary. You are most suitable to be a little brother to warm the bed." Enoch cooperated and carried her to the bed. "Today's weather is good. I'll let you see how suitable I am to warm the bed." Soon, some indescribable sounds came from the bedroom. No matter how unhappy Situ Jin's admirers in the Empire were, the engagement banquet was still held as usual. However, Gu Xingyin realized that she had underestimated a certain man's self-esteem. She looked at the Windstorm Merchant Guild's fleet that suddenly descended in unison, as well as the orderly voices that shouted, "Madam." After a moment of surprise, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "When did you become so serious?" Enoch rarely wore formal clothes and was holding her hand. He replied, "How can I really let people think that I'm a man who lives off a woman? Even if I don't care, you are the Empire's #1 goddess. If you really marry a useless man, won't people gossip?" He couldn't bear to let his woman suffer because of him. Chapter 435. Gu Xingyin's heart was filled with warmth and sweetness when she heard that. Among all the worlds, Enoch was the best at pleasing a girl. At this moment, Enoch complained again, "The emperor of your empire is too greedy. In order to let my fleet in successfully, I spent a lot of money." Gu Xingyin smiled and did not say anything. Based on her past experience dealing with the Storm Chamber of Commerce, this man was obviously not someone who would suffer losses. Sure enough, the next second, Enoch spoke again. "The red crystal production this year is not good. I have to tell them to sell it sparingly." Gu Xingyin secretly lit a candle for a certain emperor. After this wedding banquet that was broadcasted live across the entire empire, all the mocking and disdainful comments disappeared in an instant. Gu Xingyin applied for a month's leave from the emperor, and the two began their honeymoon journey. On the starship that was in autopilot mode, Enoch hugged Gu Xingyin as they stood in front of the transparent window and looked at the starry sky outside. "The first time I saw you, I felt that you were very special," Enoch said slowly. Gu Xingyin did not comment. "Which history book did you read about this ancient way of chatting up girls?" Enoch laughed when he heard that. Gu Xingyin leaned into his arms and could clearly feel the man's entire chest vibrating. He said, "You're really not romantic at all." He gently kissed the ear of the person in his arms. "This is not sweet talk. I was really mesmerized by you the first time I saw you." He could not describe that feeling. When he saw her figure walking down from the Star Hawk on the storm planet, he felt that he could not take his eyes off her. It was like a signal from the depths of his soul. The voice in his heart told him that it was her, and he wanted her. He had seen this face in the information before, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. He was deeply shocked. He originally thought that the path he was pursuing would be very difficult, but he did not expect the indifferent person to nod without hesitation after hearing his words. Okay. He thought that this was probably the luckiest day of his life. Enoch hugged the person in his arms with a satisfied expression. Suddenly, a memory flashed through his mind. His expression froze, and all of a sudden, many unfamiliar fragments poured into his mind. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt that her body was a little heavy. The inexplicable pressure made it hard for her to breathe even though she had an SSS physique. What's wrong? She sensed that something was wrong. She resisted the discomfort and turned around in the man's arms. Enoch looked like he was in pain. When Gu Xingyin reached out to touch his face, he suddenly opened his eyes. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. The person in front of him was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. There were too many things contained in his eyes. Xingyin. There was a smile on his face as he called her name softly. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Who are you? She asked warily. No one knew the name Gu Xingyin except for the system. She did not know why, although she was vigilant, she subconsciously felt that this man would not hurt her. System? She called the system in her mind, but the system did not respond. Ah Zhen, Cici, Nika. He said the familiar names one by one. Gu Xingyin covered her mouth in disbelief. Chapter 436. You. For the first time, tears came out of her eyes, but Gu Xingyin did not have the time to wipe them away. She looked at the man in front of her without blinking. Enoch reached out his hand and gently wiped away the tears on her face. He sighed and hugged her in his arms. Don't cry, I'll always be by your side. Gu Xingyin really could not stop her tears. She had been through so many worlds, and every time she went to find him alone. She always remembered the memories between them, but he did not remember her. Sometimes she would feel wronged. You. Who are you? Gu Xingyin finally asked this question. The man hugging her paused for a moment, then said, This question, now is not the time to tell you. She lifted her head from his arms, then, Can you remember me in the future? The man gently kissed the corner of her eyes. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. Gu Xingyin only felt her vision go black, and then she lost consciousness. When she opened her eyes again, Gu Xingyin found that she had returned to the space where she was born. The system appeared by her side this time. What's going on? She asked. The system replied, In the previous world, the host's identity was discovered by the laws of the world, and you were forcefully expelled. Why is it like this? Nothing like this has ever happened before? The system replied, The host should know the reason. In the previous world, another powerful soul awakened its memories. The host has been through many mission worlds, and the strength of the soul has been raised to an extremely powerful level. A world can only contain one soul. It's fine if your lover's memories are sealed, but once he recovers his memories, he will be immediately discovered by the laws of the world. Gu Xingyin was silent. So, the cause of all this was her lover? Is he okay? She was worried. The host can rest assured. System, you've always known his identity, right? Can you tell me? The system said, This question, when he is willing to tell you, you will naturally know. Then, what about Situ Jean? If she was sent back to the space, then what about Situ Jean in the mission world? During Situ Jean and her husband's honeymoon, they unfortunately encountered an interstellar storm and died. Gu Xingyin was silent. Fortunately, the mission had been completed. System. Gu Xingyin struggled to ask her last question. According to what you said, does that mean that he and I will never have the chance to have complete memories of each other? She was a little afraid of the answer the system would give her. The system replied, Yes. Gu Xingyin was shocked. The system continued, The host's soul needs to be strong enough, so strong that even if the world's laws discover you, they can't do anything to you. Gu Xingyin grasped the crux of the matter. You're talking about me. Do you mean that he's already strong enough? The system used silence to express its agreement. How can I make my soul stronger? The system replied quickly, Every time the host enters a world and completes a mission, the host's soul will be upgraded. This is the fastest way. Gu Xingyin received the answer and instantly became energetic. System, let's enter the next mission world. Yes, host. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and allowed the system to bring her to another world. Chapter 437. Gu Xingyin found herself waking up on a huge pink princess bed. In the previous two worlds, one was a general who was forced to dress up as a man, and the other was a cold-blooded general. Gu Xingyin found herself not used to the sudden change in style of a young girl. She sorted out the plot in her mind. The original name was Su Keqing. Before she was 10 years old, she was a pampered young lady. When she was 10 years old, her father passed away due to illness and her mother committed suicide after writing her will. She became the sole heir of the Su family's wealth. However, she was still young. Su Keqing's mother went to beg her father's best friend to be her guardian before her daughter became an adult. He Junyan was 23 years old at that time and was a well-known business powerhouse in Jianghu city. When Su Keqing was 10 years old, she had lost two of her closest relatives in succession. One could imagine how big of a blow it was. However, her guardian was busy with business matters and could not spare much time to accompany her. Unexpectedly, she developed a rebellious temperament. He Junyan was usually busy with business and only paid attention to her eating, drinking, and playing. He did not pay much attention to her. Su Keqing's character was spoiled, but she was not a bad person. Apart from her bad reputation in school, she did not cause much trouble. However, later on, she met a girl whose name was very similar to hers. Su Qing. At first, Su Keqing did not like her. She did not like this girl whose name was very similar to hers. When her parents were still alive, they called her Qingqing. Su Qing was also called Qingqing. However, Su Qing was really a very warm person, just like her name. She did not mind Su Keqing's hostility towards her. On the first day, she smiled brightly and told her that their names were very similar. It was really fate. Later on, when she found out that Su Keqing's parents were no longer around, she treated her even better. During festivals, she would give her handmade gifts. At noon, she would share lunch with her and often tell her little jokes. No one had ever put in so much effort for her. Su Keqing was just a 10-year-old girl. How could she resist such kindness? She quickly treated Su Qing as her best friend. She would confide in her, share all kinds of little secrets, and even bring her home. Su Qing even told her that she was born to be a rich young lady and should live with pride. Those who did not like her were just jealous of her. Su Keqing naively believed him. She continued to do things her own way. When she encountered some criticism, she did not bother to explain. She firmly believed that the innocent would be innocent. Su Keqing was silly. She didn't know how bad her reputation had become. She also didn't know how good Su Qing's reputation was compared to hers. Everyone knew that there was a gentle and kind Su Qing by the side of the bad-tempered and vicious Miss Su Keqing. The two of them went to junior high school and high school together. Su Keqing even used her connections to go to the same university as Su Qing. Until her graduation, until her guardian returned all her assets to her, she even personally invited Su Qing to join her company. This was the beginning of all the nightmares. Su Qing was promoted step by step under her green light and quickly received unanimous praise from the company. Su Keqing had never felt any sense of crisis. She was happy for her friend. Until Su Qing threw a signed share transfer agreement in front of her. Su Keqing, do you know that I've tolerated you for a long time? Chapter 438. Su Qing had told her that she had always hated Su Keqing and that she had only been pretending to care for her all these years. She was jealous of Su Keqing. She could not accept that she was better than Su Keqing in every aspect, yet she could only be Su Keqing's backdrop. Su Keqing did not even know when she had signed the share transfer agreement. She had been kicked out of her company. In a daze, Su Keqing had driven her car into a guardrail and ended her life. Gu Xingyin finished reading the entire plot and felt that Su Keqing was really stupid. She was so stupid that she was pitiful. However, she also understood her. She had never enjoyed warmth, and no one had treated her so well. When she suddenly met someone like Su Qing, it was like a person who had fallen into the abyss and finally saw a ray of sunshine. She just couldn't let go of it once she grabbed it. As for Su Qing, Gu Xingyin's eyes turned cold. People who played with other people's true feelings were always so disgusting. At this time, Su Keqing had just turned 10 years old and had just experienced the biggest blow in her life. After her mother's funeral, He Junyan had brought her back to the He family. She slowly got up from the girlish bed and looked around the room. The entire room was pink in princess style. From Gu Xingyin's eyes, she could tell that He Junyan, her guardian, was really generous to Su Keqing in terms of material things. She did not wear shoes and walked barefoot to the full-length mirror. In the mirror, the girl's eyebrows were not fully developed and she looked a little haggard. It was obvious that the successive events during this period of time had hit her hard. Her big eyes were round and bright, her small and delicate nose, her pink and slightly pouty lips, and her soft hair were slightly curled. She was a little beauty that no one could harden their heart when they saw her. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in, Gu Xingyin answered instinctively. Someone opened the door. It was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. Her eyes were very gentle. Miss, sir is calling for you for lunch. Before she could finish her sentence, she noticed Gu Xingyin's bare feet on the floor and hurried over. As she walked, she nagged, Aya, miss, you can't not wear shoes. Although it's not cold now, it's almost autumn. If you don't pay attention when you're young, in the future. She nagged, not like a woman in her 20s, but more like an auntie. As she spoke, she bent down to get a pair of slippers for Gu Xingyin to put on. Got it, Sister May. I'll be careful. Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. He Junyan was afraid that she wouldn't like older women, so he had spent a lot of effort to find Sister May. It was said that her hometown was in the countryside, and her husband had died in an accident after half a year of marriage. She was unwilling to remarry, but the He family was hiring. Seeing that she was efficient and kind, they hired her to take care of Su Keqing. When Sister May found out about Su Keqing, she had always felt sorry for her. Unfortunately, the original Su Keqing had always despised her for being too long-winded and had always been annoyed by her. Sister May was clearly surprised to hear Gu Xingyin's words. Miss Su had been in the He family for a few days and had always been indifferent to everyone. Everyone pitied her for having just lost her parents, so they understood. What was wrong with her today? Gu Xingyin saw her expression and blinked her big eyes. She said softly, Sister May, I dreamed of my mother last night. She said that she wants me to listen to Uncle He and be an obedient child. Otherwise, she'll be worried. Sister May's eyes moistened when she heard this. She looked at the little girl who seemed to have grown up in an instant and nodded. Yes, yes. Miss, if you listen to Sir and live happily, your mother will be at ease. Chapter 439. Gu Xingyin tidied up and went downstairs. There was already someone sitting at the dining table. The dishes were laid out on the table, but no one was eating. The man was obviously waiting for her. Gu Xingyin looked at the man from head to toe. Since they were at home, he wasn't dressed very formally. He didn't wear a tie on his shirt and his sleeves were rolled up slightly, revealing half of his forearm. Looking up, his silhouette was slightly deeper than normal. His eyes were deep and spirited, his nose was straight, and his sexy thin lips were slightly pursed. This was a handsome man. Gu Xingyin suddenly remembered a saying, people with thin lips were often heartless. Thinking about He Junyan in the original plot, he was indeed heartless. He Junyan didn't move and allowed her to look at him. At the same time, he was also looking at Gu Xingyin. She still looked the same, but he felt that something had changed. Hello, Uncle He. Gu Xingyin greeted him obediently. He Junyan was a little surprised. This was the first time Su Keqing had taken the initiative to greet him in the week she had lived here. He looked at Gu Xingyin carefully. The arrogant little girl seemed to be looking at him nervously. Although her expression seemed calm, he could see the hidden nervousness in her eyes and the trace of dependence in her big cat eyes. He suddenly remembered the time when he went to the Su family before the new year. The little Su Keqing had acted like a little adult and questioned him about who he was. His heart softened instantly. He softened his expression and smiled. "Qingqing, come and eat." He saw that after he spoke, the little girl's expression immediately relaxed and she revealed a big smile. Then, she sat down on her seat and ate obediently. He Junyan didn't live with the rest of the family, so there were only 2 masters in this huge villa. After the meal, the servants in the house finished packing up. He Junyan sat there and looked at Gu Xingyin, who was standing there hesitantly. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "What's the matter, Qingqing?" This silly child. She had been standing here for so long. He suspected that if he did not speak, she would stand here for the entire afternoon. Hearing his words, the little girl in front of him seemed to have gained her courage. She walked up to him, opened her arms, and hugged his waist. He Junyan felt awkward for a moment. He didn't like to interact with people. Even his own parents rarely had physical contact with him. He was about to push away the little girl in his arms when Gu Xingyin suddenly raised her head and looked at him with her big unblinking eyes. "Uncle He, everyone says that since my parents are no longer around, Qingqing will only have Uncle He. Is that true?" When the little girl said this, the sadness in her eyes made people want to erase all the things that made her unhappy. He Junyan couldn't bring his hand down no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he sighed and changed the direction of his outstretched hand to pull Gu Xingyin into his arms. "You still have Uncle He. Uncle He will make sure Qingqing grows up happily and be the happiest little princess. But everyone says that Uncle He will get married in the future and have children. When that time comes, no one will want Qingqing anymore." Gu Xingyin despised herself for acting cute at her age. But after thinking about it, she felt that it was okay to act coquettishly in front of her lover, so she went all out. Chapter 440. He Junyan hugged her gently. "That won't happen. Uncle He promises that no matter what happens, I'll love Qingqing the most." "Really?" The young lady's large eyes sparkled as she stared unblinkingly at He Junyan. He Junyan couldn't help but nod. "Really?" Gu Xingyin happily buried her head in his chest and hugged him even tighter. "Uncle He is the best." He Junyan broke into a smile at her childish words. Then, he realized what was going on and couldn't help but laugh. Since when did he become so easily affected by others? But looking at the young lady in his arms, his heart softened. What did it matter if he doted on such a pitiful and adorable young lady? Gu Xingyin leaned her entire body into her lover's arms, her heart peaceful. The system said that as long as she experienced more worlds and completed various tasks, one day her soul would be strong enough. One day, she would be able to stay in the same place as her lover, who had complete memories. Unknowingly, 2 years passed. In these 2 years, Su Keqing and He Junyan's relationship grew better and better. He Junyan had pitied her in the beginning, but now, he had truly placed this young lady in his heart. He looked at the young lady's increasingly dependent gaze and felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. The melancholy and uneasiness in the young lady's eyes faded, replaced by pride, willfulness, and high spirits. These were all things that he had brought to her. "Uncle He." As soon as he stepped through the door, Gu Xingyin dashed over and threw herself into his arms. He Junyan lifted her up with practiced ease. "You've gained weight again," he teased. Gu Xingyin pouted and said unhappily, "No, Uncle He, you're lying." "Ha ha ha, Qingqing has to report to the new school tomorrow, but Uncle He is very busy tomorrow. What if I don't have time to accompany you?" He Junyan teased her on purpose. Sure enough, the young lady, who had been in high spirits just a moment ago, was stunned when she heard this. Even her large eyes lost their light as she sat there with her head drooping. "It doesn't matter. Uncle He, your company matters are more important. I'll let Sister May accompany me." The little girl clearly looked like she was about to cry, but she still tried to comfort him. He Junyan's heart softened at once. He quickly pulled her into his arms and coaxed, "Uncle He is here to tease you. How can Uncle He not attend such an important day?" As soon as he finished speaking, the little girl in his arms revealed a sly smile. He, I lied to you. I knew it was impossible for Uncle He not to accompany me. You were deceived by me. When Gu Xingyin said this, her eyes were full of smiles. Looking at her arrogant little face, He Jianyan realized that he wasn't angry at being lied to at all. He sighed helplessly. This little devil was really sent by the heavens to jinx him. He reached out and pinched Gu Xingyin's face. Qingqing, you've learned bad things. Gu Xingyin said with a serious face, even if Qingqing has gone astray, it's still Uncle He's favorite Qingqing. He Jianyan's face was full of indulgence. Although he looked helpless on the surface, he was happy on the inside. Only a little girl who had been pampered and never had any worries or troubles would have the guts to say such proud and self-righteous words. For 2 whole years, he had used his heart full of tenderness in exchange for such a precious gift from the heavens. Chapter 441. He Jianyan personally held Su Keqing's hand as they walked into the school. This school was an elite private high school and had a good reputation outside. There were almost no negative reports about it. This was also the reason why He Jianyan had sent Su Keqing here. Today was the first day of school. It was rare for the school to be so lively. There were parents walking their children everywhere. But even among so many people, He Jianyan and Su Keqing were the most eye-catching couple. Mommy, she's so pretty. I want to take her as my bride. A little fatty couldn't take his eyes off Gu Xingyin and exclaimed loudly. He Jianyan's face darkened immediately. He couldn't explain how he felt when he heard those words. It was probably because the treasure he had guarded for so long was being coveted by someone else. Even if the other party was a little kid who didn't know anything, he was still very unhappy. The little fatty's mother could probably tell that He Jianyan was unhappy. She hurriedly apologized to the 2 of them and pulled her son away. Uncle He Jianyan felt his hand being shaken. He came back to his senses and lowered his head to see the little girl looking at him blankly. Her big eyes were filled with confusion. Uncle He, you're unhappy, Gu Xingyin said firmly. He Jianyan smiled. No, Uncle He isn't unhappy. Let's go. I'll take you to see your teacher. Then teacher, please take care of our Qingqing. He Jianyan's attitude was very sincere. Gu Xingyin's homeroom teacher was a young female teacher who wasn't married yet. When she saw such a handsome man like He Jianyan, she couldn't help but blush even though she didn't have any other thoughts. Don't worry, Mr. He. Then Qingqing, Uncle will leave first. I'll pick you up after school. He Jianyan patiently squatted down and said goodbye to Gu Xingyin patiently. Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. Okay. Goodbye, Uncle He. Qingqing will definitely be obedient. Seeing He Jianyan's figure disappear, the little girl's expression finally collapsed. She looked like she was about to cry. The homeroom teacher watched the whole thing from the side. Her heart ached for the little girl's sensibility. She obviously couldn't bear to part with him, but she pretended to be happy so that her parents wouldn't worry. She couldn't help but think of her own little nephew who was the same age as her. He was simply a little devil. How could he be as sensible as this little girl? She personally walked over and held Gu Xingyin's hand as they walked into the classroom. Let's go, Qingqing. I'll introduce you to your new classmates. As soon as Gu Xingyin entered the class, she received countless gazes. She had specially dressed up today. She wore a light pink princess dress, a pair of matching pink boots, and a pink wide-brimmed hat on her head. She looked just like a real little princess. Needless to say, Su Keqing's appearance was very delicate. She blinked her big eyes and stood on the podium with a sweet smile as she introduced herself. Hello everyone, my name is Su Keqing. You can call me Qingqing. Pa. There was a loud round of applause from below. Gu Xingyin took a closer look and saw that it was the little fatty who said that he wanted to marry her. Qingqing, sit with me. The little fatty shouted as if they were close friends. Gu Xingyin smiled at him. Then she tilted her head and looked at the homeroom teacher to ask for her opinion. The homeroom teacher was charmed by her actions and nodded repeatedly. Qingqing, where do you want to sit? You can choose a seat. Chapter 442. Gu Xingyin and the little fatty became deskmates. Hello, Qingqing. My name is Zhang Susu. When the little fatty saw that the most beautiful girl in the class had become his deskmate, he smiled so widely that his eyes narrowed, revealing his big white teeth. Hello. Gu Xingyin greeted him. The little fatty took out a lot of snacks from his bag and placed them on the big table. Come, Qingqing. I'll treat you to something. This was his favorite thing. Qingqing was really too cute. Otherwise, he wouldn't bear to share it with her. Gu Xingyin looked at the pile of snacks and then glanced at the little fatty. She knew in her heart how he got his body shape. She chose the smallest one and held it in her hand. Thank you. The little fatty frowned and grabbed 2 handfuls of chocolate and put it in her hand. Eat more. The one you took is not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Gu Xingyin. This deskmate was too enthusiastic. She didn't know that the little fatty's mind was full of what his hooligan father had said to him. Son, Dad told you, this relationship has to start from a young age. Dad told you, when you enter the school and see the most beautiful girl, you must not be stingy. You must be serious about your relationship. Now you have to prepare early, don't you? Although his father was picked up by his mother and swept aside before he could finish his words, the little fatty remembered these words in his heart. Qingqing was the most beautiful girl in the class. No, Qingqing was the most beautiful girl among all the girls he had ever seen. Listen to Dad and treat her well. When you grow up, marry her and make her your wife. Gu Xingyin didn't know what the little fatty beside her was thinking. She was waiting for Su Qing's arrival. That's right, Su Qing would also be attending this school and this class. Soon, the person she was waiting for arrived. Compared to Su Keqing, Su Qing's dressing was much more proper. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. She wore a sky blue overalls and carried a denim bag. She was also a pink and cute little girl. Gu Xingyin waited for her to introduce herself. Hello everyone, I'm Su Qing. Please call me Qing Qing. As Gu Xingyin had expected, Su Qing also asked people to call her Qingqing. In the original plot, Su Keqing had a very bad temper at that time. When she introduced herself to the class, she gave a random name. Later, when Su Qing entered the class, she asked others to call her Qing Qing. Everyone tacitly acknowledged Su Qing as Qing Qing. Su Keqing was just the cold Su Keqing. After Su Qing introduced herself, the expected welcoming scene did not appear. At the end of the day, she was still a 13-year-old girl. Encountering such a situation, she was completely dumbfounded. She looked blankly at her homeroom teacher who was standing at the side. Only then did the form teacher remember that there was still Qing Qing in the class. Before she could say anything, Zhang Susu, who was sitting beside Gu Xingyin, pointed at Gu Xingyin and shouted, "There's already a Qingqing in our class." Gu Xingyin, well done. Su Qing's gaze followed and landed on Gu Xingyin. At first glance, she was stunned by the doll's exquisite appearance, which was like that of a TV drama. The little girl's innate competitive mentality made her very unhappy. Under everyone's gaze, Su Qing's eyes suddenly turned red. But, my family calls me Qing Qing. She looked at Su Keqing eagerly, as if hoping that she would say something. Chapter 443. Gu Xingyin saw the look in Su Qing's eyes. She knew what Su Qing wanted. Su Qing looked gentle on the surface, but deep down, she was more selfish and domineering than anyone else. She would never allow anyone else to have what belonged to her. She wanted Gu Xingyin to relent. Gu Xingyin had specially come early today. How could she let Su Qing have her way? Coincidentally, Su Keqing was better at acting coquettishly and crying than anyone else in this lifetime. Gu Xingyin saw that everyone was looking at her because of Su Qing's words, and she seemed to be at a loss. Everyone saw that the delicate little girl's delicate little nose twitched, and tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. Gu Xingyin, who would cry at the slightest disagreement, said while sniffling, "I am Qingqing. If others are called Qingqing, then who am I? Her long eyelashes were stained with tears. She did not look at anyone else, but lowered her eyes and sniffled. The little fatty, Zhang Susu, seemed to be frightened. He did not even care about the snacks he was eating, and sat at the side anxiously. People's minds were biased. The first person he met was Su Keqing. Su Keqing's appearance was more exquisite and cute than Su Qing's. Now that Su Qing was crying because of Su Qing, he had a deep dislike for this new classmate of Su Qing's. Su Qing seemed to be a little confused. She even held back the tears that were about to fall. She had probably never seen such a delicate little girl. Tears came at the drop of a hat. The homeroom teacher was having a headache. Su Keqing's background was said to be very powerful. When her parents brought her to the school, it was the principal who personally brought her to the class. Although the principal did not say it explicitly, he had said a few words about it. What he meant was that Su Keqing's background was very powerful, and if she was in the class, she should take good care of her and so on. It was only the first day, and she had already made someone cry. This was really, the child who cries gets candy. This was indeed a famous saying. In the end, Su Keqing became Qingqing, and Su Qing became Haruko. Gu Shengyin was quite satisfied with the final outcome. When He Zhenyan came to pick her up in the afternoon, she didn't say much. But at night, he still found out about what had happened in class during the day. He came to the little girl's room, pinched her little nose, and sighed, "So delicate, you can't bear the slightest grievance. Have I spoiled you?" Gu Shengyin slapped his big hand away unhappily and pouted. "Love is Uncle He's love. Don't give it to others." He Zhenyan's heart melted at her words. Sensing the change in his mentality, he finally knew where the little girl's squeamishness came from. It was clearly because he spoiled her. Fine. He Zhenyan seemed to have accepted his fate. After all, Uncle He will always be there to protect you. So what if my Qingqing is a little spoiled? My little princess Qing, no matter how spoiled and domineering she is, it doesn't matter. Moreover, her Qing had always been so obedient. CEO He, where are your principles? Where's your bottom line? Oh right, Uncle He, I made a good friend in school today. Gu Shengyin tried her best to act as a little girl who was presenting a treasure to an adult. She excitedly introduced her new friend, Zhang Susu, to He Zhenyan. At this moment, He Zhenyan's mood was not so good. That little fatty must be up to no good. He learned how to seduce girls at such a young age. He didn't learn well at all. Qingqing, listen to Uncle. In school, you have to keep a distance from the boys. Good girls will not play close to boys. He Zhenyan spouted nonsense with a straight face. Chapter 444. Gu Shengyin was laughing in her heart, but on the surface, she looked puzzled. Why, Uncle He, Teacher Xiao said that we should love each other. He Zhenyan smiled gently. Good girl, Qingqing. Your teacher means not to throw a tantrum in school, and to be generous and sincere to others. You still have to keep a distance. Gu Shengyin stopped teasing him and nodded obediently. Gu Shengyin's junior high school life went smoothly. She was good-looking, had good grades, and was especially generous to her classmates. Although she was a little arrogant, coupled with her exquisite face, everyone just thought that she had a straightforward personality. Su Qing was not so happy. Although their names differed by only one word, Su Keqing was better than her in every aspect. Even the people she knew from other classes knew that there was a particularly famous Su Keqing in Class 1. Some even mistook her for Su Keqing. The thing that made her the most unhappy was that Su Keqing alone got 80% of the votes in the class committee election. Although she was second, the gap was too big. If that was the case, then so be it. But Su Keqing actually said that she did not sign up for the class after the results were out. She did not want to be the class monitor. Su Qing became the class monitor as she wished, but when she heard the results announced by Teacher Xiao, she was not happy at all. Su Keqing did not like it and did not want it, so it was her turn. The things that she, Su Qing, wanted should be fought for with her own dignity, not thrown to her like a piece of trash. Su Qing was very sullen as the class monitor. One of Gu Xingyin's fun every day was to see Su Qing suffer. 2 of her fun was to be a foodie deskmate. 3 of her fun was to tease a certain serious uncle. Perhaps because she was still young, Su Qing did not have many bad thoughts. Although she did not like Su Keqing, she did not hate her. And because Su Keqing's personality was too different from the plot, Su Qing did not have the chance to enter Su Keqing's heart. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, was much more direct. She directly expressed her dislike for this classmate whose name was very similar to hers. Perhaps it was because her personality was too simple. If she liked someone, she liked them. If she didn't like them, she didn't like them. Her classmates all liked to be friends with her. Everyone understood why she didn't want to get close to Su Qing. According to Qing Qing's temperament, it would be strange if she liked Su Qing, who had the same name as her. On the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year, Gu Xingyin made great progress in her mission. 2 years could really change many things. Su Keqing, for example, had changed from a delicate doll to a tall girl with delicate eyebrows. Her temperament was still as arrogant and willful, but more and more people were looking at her. Su Qing, for example, had always been gentle and kind. After being the class monitor for a few years, she had gained a good reputation in the class. However, the one who changed the most was the little fatty, Zhang Susu. Since he entered the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year, no one knew what he ate or how he grew. His body suddenly lengthened rapidly, and the fat on his body disappeared. In just half a year, the little fatty had become a handsome and youthful teenager. At the age of 15 or 16, it was the time when love was first awakened. What's more, Zhang Susu had believed his father's words from the beginning and had some feelings for Gu Xingyin. Chapter 445. Gu Xingyin could sense the change in her deskmate. Zhang Susu's attitude towards her was no longer as natural as before. Sometimes, he would stammer when he spoke. Gu Xingyin could feel him sneaking glances at her when she was doing her homework. Sometimes, he would blush when he looked at her. The attractiveness of Su Keqing's body was undeniable. Moreover, she had been spoiled by He Junyin too much. The luxurious life she led made her look even more arrogant, just like a little princess who lived high up in an ivory tower. Such a girl was fatally attractive to adolescent boys. Zhang Susu was a very good boy. This was the conclusion that Gu Xingyin came to after being deskmates with him for more than 2 years. Looking at his daily habits and dressing, Gu Xingyin could tell that her deskmate came from a wealthy family. However, she could not see any of the bad habits of a rich family's son. He was not arrogant in the slightest, whether it was towards Gu Xingyin or other classmates. Before he lost weight, Zhang Susu's popularity in Class 1 was surprisingly good. Now that he had become a handsome guy, it was even more obvious. It was obvious that he had feelings for Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin had really treated him as a friend for the past 2 years. It was because she had taken him to heart that she did not want to see him fall deeper and deeper. She was destined to only give her heart to that person. Why should she give others unrealistic hope? When Zhang Susu finally could not help but confess to her, Gu Xingyin firmly rejected him. Zhang Susu was obviously hurt. Gu Xingyin did not leave any room for negotiation. "I'm sorry. I've always treated you as my best friend. I don't have any siblings. I've always treated you like my older brother." Her eyes were very sincere. Zhang Susu stared at her for a long time in a daze. Finally, he smiled. He reached out his hand and rubbed the girl's hair. He smiled and said, "Sigh, I, Zhang Susu, am also a handsome guy. I didn't expect that I would be such a failure in love. My first confession was rejected so coldly. Forget it. Even if I can't be your boyfriend, I can still be your big brother. If I have a girl who's the campus belle, I'll be proud to tell others, right? But today, you have to comfort my wounded heart. Treat me to a meal." Zhang Susu looked at her casually. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "All right, what do you want to eat?" Just say the word. Zhang Susu also laughed. I know you're a rich woman. I have to take advantage of you. There wasn't much awkwardness between the two of them as they walked forward while talking. After the two of them left, a figure in white appeared at the originally empty corner of the stairs. Su Qing looked in the direction where the two of them had left. She had bitten her lower lip so hard that it had lost its color. He really did like her. Su Qing felt the imbalance in her heart rising higher and higher, almost unable to suppress it. Why was it that she, Su Keqing, was able to easily obtain something that she had never been able to obtain? She was even able to discard it like it was a pair of worn-out shoes. Su Keqing was better looking than her, had a better family background than her, and was more popular than her. Su Qing admitted all these. But why was it that the first boy she liked also liked Su Keqing? Su Keqing, everything was Su Keqing. If only Su Keqing had never existed in this world. Chapter 446. Gu Shengyin didn't return home on time after school today. He Junyan didn't see the figure that greeted him the moment he got home from work. He didn't know what to feel. He called the chauffeur who had gone to pick up Gu Shengyin to ask about the situation. Miss said that she's going to treat her classmates to dinner, so she won't be coming home for the time being. Classmates? What classmates? Alarm bells rang in He Junyan's heart. This was the first time that Qingqing hadn't returned home on time for dinner. The chauffeur merely said that he wasn't sure either. At night, Gu Shengyin returned home in a good mood. He Junyan wasn't in the living room. She looked at the time. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. Uncle He would usually be in the living room watching the news at this time. Despite her doubts, she still prepared to return to her room. There was already someone in the room. Uncle He? Gu Shengyin was a little surprised. Ever since she had gotten older, He Junyan had rarely come to her room in order to avoid arousing suspicion. Although she was surprised, she was still very happy. He Junyan's face was tense. It was obvious that he wasn't in a good mood. He stared at Gu Shengyin, who had just entered the room. I heard from the chauffeur that you're treating your classmates to dinner tonight? Gu Shengyin didn't understand and nodded. Is it your desk mate, Zhang Susu? Gu Shengyin nodded again. Looking at the outstanding young lady standing in front of him, He Junyan couldn't describe the feelings in his heart. She was like a treasure that had fallen into his hands. Over the past 5 years, he had polished her bit by bit until she was the most dazzling person she could be. Yes, she was so outstanding. There would definitely be many people with good taste who would like her. In the future, there would be even more people who would like her. Perhaps one day in the future, a strange man would snatch her away from him. From then on, she would be doted on and loved by others. Her life would have nothing to do with him. How could he tolerate something like that? As He Junyan thought of these possibilities, his eyes turned bloodshot. Uncle He, what's wrong? The little girl's worried voice pulled him back from his thoughts. He Junyan raised his head to look at Gu Shengyin, whose head had already grown to his chest. He couldn't help but blurt out, do you have someone you like? The little girl seemed to be stunned for a moment, apparently caught off guard by this question. Then, her face slowly blushed. This faint blush was distributed on her white jade-like skin, and it was astonishingly beautiful. He Junyan's heart sank. Looking at her, it was obvious that she had feelings for someone else. He Junyan could not describe what he was feeling at that moment. He felt as if half of his heart was being roasted over a fire, tormenting him unbearably. The other half of his heart was frozen in ice, so cold that it pierced his bones. I didn't raise you for you to fall in love early, Su Keqing. This was the first time He Junyan had called her by her full name. You disappoint me. After saying this, He Junyan slammed the door and left without looking back, leaving Gu Shengyin standing in the room in a daze. Gu Shengyin was stunned. System, did he misunderstand something? The system replied, according to normal human thinking, He Junyan should think that the host likes Zhang Susu. Gu Shengyin said, he didn't give me a chance to explain myself. Moreover, looking at He Junyan's current state, it was obvious that he had no idea what kind of feelings he had for Su Keqing. Even if Gu Xingyin confessed, it probably wouldn't end well. Chapter 447. He Junyan sat alone in the study. On the desktop of his computer was a document that his secretary had just sent over from overtime. He stared at it for a while, but he couldn't process a single word. His mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. Qingqing was so pretty and delicate. There must be a lot of young boys who had their eyes on her. His Qingqing was only 15 years old. Her ability to distinguish between right and wrong was not strong enough. What if she got cheated? While he was thinking about this, he had completely forgotten that when he was 15 years old, he was already able to study abroad on his own. No, I have to take precautions. I can't let anything happen to Qingqing. He Junyan quickly made a decision. The next morning, Gu Xingyin watched in bewilderment as a certain uncle returned to his usual self. Did he think things through so quickly? Gu Xingyin asked the system. The system didn't understand. Qingqing, I'll have Sister May send you to and from school every day. If you go out in the future, Sister May will follow you, he Junyan said. Gu Xingyin was a little unhappy. I'm already 15, Uncle He. I'm not a 5-year-old child anymore. He Junyan's expression was extremely gentle. In Uncle He's eyes, my Qingqing will always be a child who will never grow up. This two-faced man always knew what kind of tricks the child he raised would fall for. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else, although she was still a little unhappy. Then came the important part. Qingqing, listen to me. You're still young and not suitable for a relationship. Moreover, you're still a student. You should focus on your studies. Puppy love never ends well. He Junyan guided her patiently. Gu Xingyin was amused. She looked at He Junyan in confusion. Qingqing isn't in puppy love. He Junyan was stunned. Didn't you go on a date with your deskmate Zhang Susu yesterday? Gu Xingyin shook her head. Zhang Susu is my older brother now. He's not my boyfriend. He Junyan. Then why did you blush when I asked you that question yesterday? His mood instantly improved. Gu Xingyin was amused when she saw the man's spirited look. The intimate atmosphere between the two of them was once again restored. Su Qing began to approach Gu Xingyin. Just like in the plot, she took the initiative to approach Gu Xingyin. She invited her to do some school things with her and shared some interesting things or unimportant little secrets with her. However, Gu Xingyin was not as cooperative as she had expected. Their relationship was only average. Qing, Haruko said that she knows of a particularly fun place. Let's go have a look after school. The girl who spoke was called Rose. She was the class commissary in charge of studies. She was a very lively and cheerful girl who could get along well with anyone. Gu Xingyin pretended to be in a difficult position and shook her head. I can't. Someone from my family will come and pick me up after school. Everyone in the class knew that Su Keqing came from a well-off family. Her family was strict and her chauffeur drove her to and from school every day. If it were any other time, Rose might not have forced her. However, she remembered Su Qing's words this time. Qingqing never plays with us. This time, you must ask her to come. She grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand. Qingqing, that place is said to be a haunted house. It must be really fun. You've never played with us before. Let's go together. Chapter 448. Gu Xingyin seemed to be annoyed by her and nodded helplessly. After school, I'll tell my family that you guys will come with me, okay? Rose nodded excitedly. Okay. After school that day, other than Gu Xingyin, Su Qing, and Rose, there were 4 other girls who were quite interested in the haunted house. Zhang Susu had wanted to go with them when he heard that they were going to have fun, but Su Qing refused. We girls are going out to have fun. You're a boy, why are you joining us? Gu Xingyin walked out of the school gate and said to Sister May, who was waiting at the side, Sister May, I'm going to have some fun with my classmates. Let's have a meal together, so I won't be going back with you. Sister May looked troubled. But Sir said, Gu Xingyin took her hand and said coquettishly, Sister May, I'll talk to Uncle He myself. You see, there are so many of us, nothing will happen. Sister May said helplessly, Okay. Miss, you must remember to come back early, or Sir will be worried. Gu Xingyin nodded quickly. After settling Sister May, Gu Xingyin gestured a victory sign to where the girls were standing and walked briskly towards them. Su Qing looked at her bright smile and thought of the place they were going to soon. She sneered in her heart. I don't know if you can still smile later. Gu Xingyin didn't miss the smile on Su Qing's face. She knew that Su Qing was up to no good, so she wanted to beat her at her own game. They got on the bus. Gu Xingyin really hadn't taken this bus before. Rose looked at her curious face and said exaggeratedly, Qingqing, you haven't even taken a bus before, have you? Gu Xingyin nodded. Many passengers on the bus had already noticed this girl who didn't fit in with the surrounding environment. A few young girls even looked at the brands she was wearing with shining eyes. If they were not mistaken, many of the clothes she was wearing were famous brands that often appeared in fashion weeks. Any one of them was worth several months of their salary. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, many people were still thinking that it was probably the eldest daughter of a wealthy family who came out to experience life. The place Su Qing mentioned was really far away. They even changed buses and finally arrived at Su Qing's place after more than an hour. Heavens! Jinhua City actually has such a place? The girls all came from well-off families. At the very least, their parents were white-collar workers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to afford the expensive tuition fees of Gu Xingyin's elite school. Even the roads nearby were full of potholes. Low houses of different heights were everywhere, and some of them had even been demolished. No one had cleaned up the garbage around them. The whole place was dirty and messy. Immediately, two girls showed a look of disgust. They usually saw high-rise buildings. How could they know that such a place was hidden in a bustling international city? What is this place? Why don't we head back? Since they were already here, how could Su Qing let them go back? She hurriedly comforted them. We're not going in here. Don't forget what we're here for today. Follow me. After she finished speaking, she walked towards a place by herself. The girls looked at each other and chose to follow her. Gu Xingyin took out her phone from her bag, sent a text message to a number, and followed her. Chapter 449. Su Qing brought them to a place. This place was different from the previous place. That place was noisy and dirty, but this place was quiet. There was not even a trace of human habitation. This was a huge cement factory. It seemed that no one had been here for a long time. The whole place revealed a sense of vicissitudes and darkness, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dust. The factory did not have a door. From the outside, it looked dark inside, and they could not see clearly what was inside. In the quiet environment, it was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, waiting for them to walk into the trap. Gu Xingyin looked around and thought that this place indeed had the potential to be a haunted house. Rose was full of confidence before, but she started to feel afraid before they even entered. She pulled Gu Xingyin's sleeve and said, Qingqing, why don't we not go in? It looks quite scary here. Gu Xingyin did not say anything. Su Qing smiled and took out a flashlight from her bag. We are here to explore a haunted house. If it is not scary at all, how can it be called a haunted house? The rest of the people also gathered their courage and took out the flashlights that they had prepared. Yes, it is boring if it is not scary. Su Qing added faintly, this used to be a very big garment factory. Later, it was said that there was an accident and several people died. Slowly, there were rumors of ghosts. It made people panic. Later, the boss went bankrupt and committed suicide. This place was deserted, and no one dared to buy this place. It has been abandoned. The sky was already dark, and a cold wind blew, as if in response to Su Qing's words, making the few of them shiver. Even the girl who was not afraid of the heavens and earth earlier had a timid look on her face. Gu Shengyin also cooperated and held Rose's arm tightly. Su Qing looked at their faces and was quite satisfied with the effect that she had caused. Let's go. At this point, no matter what, they had to go in and take a look. The girls steeled their hearts, turned on their flashlights, and walked in. Gu Shengyin had already asked the system to check that there were no supernatural events in this place. Instead, the system told her that there were some fun things inside. The factory was bigger than they had imagined, and it was very dark inside. The area that the flashlight could illuminate was very small. All they could see was some abandoned equipment and materials. A girl complained, "It's nothing." I was happy for nothing. Before she could finish her sentence, the girl standing beside Gu Shengyin suddenly let out a shrill scream. Ah! Gu Shengyin found herself being hugged tightly. Everyone knew that in such an environment, people were the most susceptible to environmental contamination. The few of them were already very nervous. Now that they heard her shout, they immediately panicked. Some of the more timid ones also started screaming. They huddled together. Gu Shengyin was the calmest. She grabbed the girl and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" The girl did not dare to raise her head. She just pointed in a direction and said, There's someone there. I saw a person in red just now." If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't find her way by herself, she would have run outside long ago. When she said that, everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. A figure in red, this was a must for a supernatural story. Chapter 450. Gu Shengyin snapped, "Shut up, all of you." When she said this, she unconsciously carried a trace of her aura when she was Situjin, which successfully shut the girls up. "I want to see what can be here." Gu Shengyin did not hesitate to take the flashlight and shine it in the direction the girl said. 2 years passed. There was indeed a red shadow. "It's just a discarded piece of clothing." Gu Shengyin breathed a sigh of relief. That piece of clothing might have been used as a sample in the past. It was hung there straight, and with the bright red color, it was indeed scary in this environment. "Why don't we go back?" The girl who screamed earlier seemed to be scared out of her wits, and did not have the courage to continue. There were 2 others who also said that it was late, and they should go back. Gu Shengyin received a system prompt at this time. She glanced in the direction where Su Qing was and said, "I also think that this place is a bit strange, let's go back." Su Qing moved her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. At this time, in the darkness, there was suddenly a doo-doo sound, like the sound of high heels hitting the ground. There were no outsiders here except for the few of them. Where did this sound come from? The few of them were even more scared, and the timid one even cried softly in fear. In a place where no one could see, Su Qing's eyes lit up, and she said in a regretful tone, "Well, since you all said so, then let's go back." The few of them had just walked outside when a low female voice sounded in the darkness. "Don't go. Come and accompany me." This voice was very hoarse, like the sound of a pen rubbing on rough paper. It was annoying. However, the people present were not in the mood to consider whether the voice was good or not. Ah! No one knew who started it first, but the few of them scattered and ran outside. So, this was Su Qing's purpose. Thanks to the system, Gu Shengyin could see that Su Qing was standing there calmly. There was no trace of fear on her face. Presumably, that voice was also designed by her, right? Gu Shengyin had more or less guessed what Su Qing's purpose was. Gu Shengyin pretended to run out in panic. Suddenly, a pair of hands stretched out from behind and grabbed her feet. At the same time, a sinister voice sounded, "Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Come and accompany me," Gu Shengyin sneered. As expected, he was waiting for her here. If she was a normal girl, she might have fainted already. Gu Shengyin sneered. She lifted her leg and stomped on the hand. "Ah!" The man on the ground screamed. Ghosts can actually scream? Gu Shengyin was so surprised that he said something that made the ghost speechless. She really couldn't speak at this moment. Gu Xingyin didn't show any mercy when he kicked her. She even heard the sound of her own bones breaking. Gu Xingyin didn't stop. She panicked and ran out of the door. She ran out of the door and asked the system, "Did the others run out?" The system replied, "They've all gone out. Only Su Qing and her 2 friends are still inside." Gu Xingyin looked back at the dark factory and smiled coldly. "System, create some virtual scenes and let them have a taste of what it's like to be haunted by ghosts. Su Qing, I hope you'll be satisfied with this gift of mine." Chapter 451. "Qingqing, you're out too." Someone called out to her from afar. Gu Xingyin walked over and saw 5 girls gathered together, waiting for her. They were obviously terrified, but they didn't leave. They were waiting for their friends who hadn't come out yet, which made Gu Xingyin feel a sense of warmth in her heart. "Is everyone okay?" Gu Xingyin asked. She glanced at them. Other than the timid girl who was still crying, everyone else was fine. Well, Su Qing's target was her. The others were at most frightened. "Qingqing, have you seen Haruko?" Rose asked. Gu Xingyin seemed to have just realized that someone was missing. She shook her head with a panicked expression. "No, I ran outside with you guys." Haruko wouldn't. She looked at the monster-like factory building in horror. Her expression was full of panic. "Is she still inside?" When the girls heard this, they recalled what had just happened and shuddered. Rose was about to cry when she heard this. She was the study committee member. At this moment, she felt that she should do something. She couldn't just leave her classmate inside. But if they were to go in again to look for her, looking at the girls' frightened expressions, even Rose didn't dare to go in again. "Why don't we call the police?" Gu Xingyin suggested. The girls snapped out of their daze. Yes, yes, yes. Call the police." Gu Xingyin took out her phone and called the police. Then, she called He Junyan. She had actually sent a message to He Junyan earlier, saying that she was here and that if she forgot to call him at 8:00, he could come here to pick her up. It was just 7:00. He Junyan picked up the call. "Qingqing. Uncle He." In order to act more convincing, Gu Xingyin started crying the moment she picked up the phone. He Junyan hadn't returned home yet. He was socializing outside. When he heard Gu Xingyin's crying, he panicked. "What's wrong, Qing?" "I heard from Sister May that you went out to play with your classmates." Gu Xingyin only cared about crying and didn't say anything. He Junyan left the noisy area and asked directly, "Where are you now?" "Uncle He will come and pick you up." Gu Xingyin gave him an address. He Junyan frowned when he heard this. Why would a few girls go to such a remote place? Be good and find a place to wait for Uncle. Keep your phone connected. Uncle will be here soon. He Junyan pushed open the door of the private room and simply excused himself, saying that he had something urgent to attend to. "I say, Mr. He, that's not very kind of you. Everyone is having a good time." Some of the drunkards refused to give up. He Junyan suddenly looked straight at him. The pressure in his eyes made him lose his voice. "Everyone, I'm really sorry. I really have something urgent to attend to today. I'll come back another day to ask for forgiveness." Everyone in the private room watched as he walked out of the door. On the other side, when they saw Gu Xingyin calling home, it was as if a certain valve had been turned on. The girls all took out their phones to call home. For a moment, there was a commotion of crying. Gu Xingyin understood them. After being frightened today, it was a good thing that they could cry. The few of them didn't dare to enter the factory again, but they also didn't dare to leave Su Qing alone. They could only watch from afar, hoping that Su Qing would run out on her own in the next moment. However, Gu Xingyin was determined to let Su Qing reap what she sowed this time. She instructed the system to treat her well. How could she let her out so easily? Chapter 452. Half an hour later, there was still no sign of Su Qing coming out. The girls' faces had already darkened. They had already imagined countless scenarios in their minds. Beep! Beep! An ear-piercing sound was heard, and a blinding light shone on them. It was a police car. They had never thought that the police were so cute. They were overjoyed and quickly waved in the direction of the police car. The car stopped near them, and a few uniformed police officers got out of the car. "Did you call the police?" Rose nodded fiercely. "Sir, we still have a classmate inside. Hurry up and save her." The police officer's face was grave. What happened? Rose forced herself to calm down and told them what had happened that day. When she mentioned the factory, she couldn't help but shiver. She looked at the police officer in front of her and pleaded, "My classmate hasn't come out for more than half an hour. Hurry up and go see her." The police officer who asked the question was a young man in his 20s. He didn't believe in supernatural things at all and said, "You're obviously scaring yourselves. How could there be a female ghost? Your classmate might have left long ago, right? Have you tried to contact her?" Rose nodded. "I called, but no one picked up." "Okay, since you don't dare to go in, just stay here obediently. We'll go in and take a look." 4 policemen came. One of them stayed outside while the other 3 walked in with bright lights. Gu Xingyin had already asked the system to stop when the police arrived. It had been so long, and she had already taught them a lesson. Just as the police entered, another car came from behind. Gu Xingyin recognized it at a glance. It was He Junyan's car. Uncle He. He Junyan had just opened the car door when a figure jumped into his arms. He quickly pulled her away and looked her up and down. When he saw that Gu Xingyin was just a little panicked and was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. "What's wrong? What happened?" When Gu Xingyin saw He Junyan, the delicate temperament she had cultivated all these years came out. Tears fell from her eyes and she hugged He Junyan's arm tightly, refusing to let go. Okay. Uncle He is here. Don't be afraid. Be good. Tell me, what happened?" He Junyan allowed her to hug him and coax her in a gentle voice that he was used to. His expression was so gentle that water could drip from it. His appearance made the girls beside him stare blankly at him. They even forgot to be afraid. They all knew that Qingqing had an uncle who had a good relationship with her. She was even raised by him. All this time, the uncle in their minds was a middle-aged man with a benevolent face and a big belly. Who would have thought that he was such a young and handsome man? Sobbing, Gu Xingyin told He Junyan everything that had happened. He Junyan's expression turned serious. He had thought more than these young ladies. Of course, he didn't believe in ghosts. These girls were probably just scaring themselves. However, Qing clearly said that someone had grabbed her feet when she ran out. There were some problems in this. He Junyan lowered his gaze, concealing the cold glint that flashed across his eyes. He didn't say much and continued to gently comfort the little girl in his arms. There were some things that he should not tell her for the time being. Chapter 453. While the 2 of them were talking, the 3 policemen who had entered the warehouse had already come out. Gu Xingyin could tell at a glance that each of the 3 policemen was carrying a person on their backs. Wasn't the one in front being carried by the young policeman Su Qing? The few of them hurriedly ran over. Gu Xingyin also hurried over to the policeman's side. Su Qing, who was lying on the policeman's back, didn't seem to have any major problems. Her face was a little pale and her eyes were tightly shut. She seemed to have fainted. However, when they saw the people on the back of the 2 policemen, the few of them looked a little strange. They were also 2 girls. Their faces were smeared so messily that it was impossible to tell their faces and ages. Their long hair was loose and they were wearing loose dresses. The people present weren't stupid. Looking at their dressing and thinking about the ghosts they had encountered earlier, they were shocked and could roughly guess what was going on. The 3 policemen didn't look too good either. Originally, when they received a report from the girls saying that there was a ghost, they didn't take it seriously. However, from the looks of it now, there was indeed a ghost. It was just that this ghost was man-made. The leading policeman looked at the few of them. He had originally planned to ask them to go to the police station to make a statement. Gu Xingyin tugged at He Jianyin's sleeve and said softly, "Uncle He, I want to go home." He Jianyin patted her head comfortingly and said to the policeman, "Officer comrade, I think they were all scared out of their wits today. These few." He pointed at the 3 people who were still unconscious. "It's best to bring them to the hospital for a checkup. They look quite serious. Can I take my child home first?" "Don't worry, tomorrow, I will personally send her to the police station to cooperate with you." This was originally against the rules. When the young policeman heard this, he frowned and was about to say something when the older policeman patted him on the shoulder. No problem. We will send the others home first. Mr. He, you can just take this young lady home first. However, we will have to trouble Mr. He to make a trip tomorrow." He Jianyin nodded at the few of them and got into the car with Gu Xingyin. As for the remaining girls, those whose parents came over were picked up by them, while the rest were sent home. He Jianyin brought Gu Xingyin home. After they got out of the car, Gu Xingyin stuck close to He Jianyin, tugging on his sleeve and not daring to leave his side. He Jianyin was both heartbroken and amused. "That's all you've got, and you dare to go to a haunted house to explore, hmm?" Gu Xingyin looked aggrieved. "I didn't want to go, but they insisted on dragging me along." He Jianyin's face hardened. "Speaking of which, I haven't settled the score with you yet. You lied to me about going out for dinner with a few classmates. You're old now, aren't you? You've learned how to lie to me." Gu Xingyin looked at him pitifully. "I was wrong, really. Uncle He, I was wrong. I won't lie to you anymore. I'll report everything to you in advance." Her attitude was unbelievably sincere. He Jianyin guessed that the young lady was really scared this time. "It's good to learn a lesson," he said hatefully. Seeing the obvious tiredness on Gu Xingyin's face, he patted her head. "Go take a bath and relax. Rest early. I'll call your teacher and ask for leave for you." Gu Xingyin rolled her eyes internally. She had to ask for leave for such a small matter. If she was really that old, she would be spoiled to the heavens. Chapter 454. After saying goodbye to Gu Xingyin, He Jianyin returned to his room. However, less than an hour later, there was a knock on his door. He Jianyin raised his eyebrows. Only a certain young lady would disturb him at this hour. Sure enough, He Jianyin got up and opened the door to see Gu Xingyin standing pitifully at the door, hugging a pillow. She was wearing white pajamas and her hair was slightly messy. She looked like a timid rabbit. Before he could speak, the young lady looked at him pitifully. "Uncle He, I'm so scared that I can't sleep," He Jianyin sighed. He realized that he really didn't know what to do with her. He stepped aside to let her in and closed the door. He Jianyin looked at her helplessly. "Don't we already know that there are no ghosts?" Gu Xingyin only looked at him pitifully. "But I'm just scared. I'm so scared that I can't sleep." He Jianyin got up. "Then I'll take you back to your room and watch you fall asleep, okay?" Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and nodded. The two of them went to Gu Xingyin's room. Gu Xingyin lay back on the bed while He Jianyin sat beside her and read a book. However, half an hour later, Gu Xingyin's eyes were still wide open. He Jianyin got up and turned off the lights helplessly. Gu Xingyin let out a short scream. "Uncle He, don't go." He Jianyin sat on the edge of her bed and quickly reached out to hold her down. "Uncle He won't go. Uncle He will stay here with you." He was just afraid that she wouldn't be able to sleep with the lights on. He felt the young lady slowly calm down after hearing his words and let out a sigh of relief. "Uncle He. Uncle He, I was really scared to death today." After a while, when He Jianyin thought that she had fallen asleep, the young lady on the bed suddenly spoke. He Jianyin patiently coaxed her gently. "It's all in the past. It's all fake. Uncle He is by your side. Qingqing, don't be afraid." Gu Xingyin continued, "At that time, I was thinking, what if I suddenly died? Uncle, he must be very sad, right? He Junyan's heart shrank when he heard the word death. Without thinking, he said sternly, don't say such inauspicious things. He seemed to realize that his tone was too harsh, so he softened his voice. With Uncle He around, no one dares to bully Qingqing. Gu Xingyin nodded. She reached out a hand from under the blanket and grabbed He Junyan's hand. I can't bear to do that either. I don't want Uncle He to have another Qing by his side and then forget about me. He Junyan could not help but laugh. That won't happen. Qingqing is one of a kind. Uncle He guarantees that Qingqing is the only one. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes in satisfaction. He Junyan could feel the breathing of the person in the room getting lighter and lighter. He called out softly, Qingqing. There was no response. He wanted to get up and leave, but he found that his hand was tightly held in her hand. Her hand that was grabbing his was so small and soft compared to his own. He Junyan suddenly remembered that young lady from back then. That was the first time she had taken the initiative to get close to him. At that time, she was still so small. When he sat down, she only reached his chest. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. He Junyan sighed and gently pulled Gu Xingyin's hand away. He covered her with the blanket and walked out. Chapter 455. Gu Xingyin slept soundly. When she woke up in the morning, it was already 9 o'clock. After washing up and changing her clothes, she went downstairs and saw He Junyan sitting in the living room. Good morning, Uncle He. Then she saw Sister May and said coquettishly, Sister May, you didn't wake me up today. He Junyan smiled faintly. I told her not to wake you up. You're sleeping so soundly. Breakfast is still warm. Hurry up and finish it. We still have to go to the police station. Gu Xingyin nodded. When the two of them arrived at the police station, they found that two other girls had also arrived. Gu Xingyin was called in alone to record her statement. When she came out, Rose pulled her aside and said worriedly, I wonder how Haruko is doing. Gu Xingyin said, she should be fine. Didn't she say that she was just a little frightened? Rose was still worried. I asked the police. They didn't say anything. She glanced at Gu Xingyin again and suddenly said in a low voice, when I came out of the bathroom earlier, I heard two policemen chatting. They said that someone deliberately led us to the haunted house this time. She looked scared. Luckily, we had more people and called the police in time. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. The next day, the police called and said that the truth was out. They asked the people involved to go and find out more. The class teacher, Li Xiaoxiao, went with them. Surprisingly, they were not asked to go to the police station. Instead, they went to the hospital. What did you say? You mean that this haunting incident was planned by my student? Or the class teacher, Su Qin, who had always been obedient and good in her eyes? Teacher Li couldn't accept it. The police looked at the class teacher with pity. One of her students planned such an incident to hurt other students. As the class teacher, she was in big trouble. Moreover, according to the confessions of those people, they didn't just do it as a prank. It was a real crime. How could Haruko be such a person? Rose couldn't believe it. This incident was planned by Su Qin. Her goal was to deal with Qingqing. Rose thought that she must be hallucinating. I want to go in and ask her myself. Gu Xingyin, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. The others followed him into the ward. In order to make it easier to guard, the three of them were arranged to be in the same ward. When the door opened, everyone in the room shrank back as if they had been frightened. Gu Xingyin glanced at the three of them. Their faces were pale and their eyes were red. Not bad, it seemed that the system was indeed very powerful. The system replied, thank you for your compliment, host. My virtual reality simulation technique is enough to make them unforgettable. Rose looked at the policeman behind her in confusion. What's wrong with them? According to the police, the three of them were there to scare her, but from the looks of it, the three of them were the ones who were overreacting. The policeman smiled helplessly. We don't know either. When the three of them woke up, they kept shouting that there was a ghost. No matter what we said, it was useless. They insisted that it was their retribution for harming others. We didn't even interrogate them, but they confessed everything. Now. He pointed at the three of them. It's better to give them a sedative. Otherwise, the three of them look like they're about to go crazy. Su Qing had been staring at Gu Xingyin since she entered the ward. Chapter 456. Su Keqing, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been jealous of you. I shouldn't have tried to harm you. I was really wrong. I admit my mistake. She said incoherently to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin seemed to be frightened by her behavior. She took a step back helplessly and a hand supported her from behind. It was He Junyan. At this moment, among the few people who had been guarding the bed, a well-dressed middle-aged man and woman walked up to Gu Xingyin. This must be Su Keqing, right? I'm Su Qing's mother. I'm really sorry about what happened to Qing this time. The woman looked to be in her 30s. Her well-maintained face was deeply apologetic. We're all classmates. Can you forgive our Qing? The woman looked at Gu Xingyin eagerly. She listened to her daughter. This incident was actually targeted at this girl. If this girl named Su Keqing didn't take it to heart, the subsequent incident wouldn't be so serious. From the moment Su Keqing entered the room, she had been sizing her up. This girl's clothes and accessories were out of the ordinary. Her eyes were filled with arrogance. One look and she could tell that she was a pampered young lady who grew up being pampered by her family. This kind of girl was the easiest to soften her heart. He Junyan frowned and pulled Su Keqing behind him. He said coldly to Su Qing's mother, "Madam, we're all parents. I can understand that you're thinking of your daughter. But as Su Keqing's guardian, I can't tolerate other people harboring evil intentions on her. Let's get to the bottom of this first. What did your daughter intend to do to our Qing? Su Qing's mother looked at her daughter worriedly. They had been guarding her the whole night. Su Qing had basically said everything she wanted to say. This was what Su Qing's mother was thinking. From another perspective, if someone had wanted to do that to her daughter, she would have fought them to the death. How could she forgive them? Sure enough, when He Junyan found out that Su Qing had only wanted to scare Su Keqing out of jealousy, and had even wanted to tear her clothes and ruin her innocence, his handsome face could only be described as dark clouds. You don't have to apologize. I have no reason to forgive this. He Junyan looked coldly at Su Qing's parents, who seemed to be ashamed. What should we do? That's it. We've seen them. We'll leave first. He nodded at the two policemen and left with Gu Xingyin. The other girls and teacher Li Xiao who stayed in the ward were shocked. They knew that it was Su Qing's doing and comforted themselves that it was just a girl's prank and that she meant no harms done. However, no one would have thought that behind this prank, there was actually such a malicious intention. And what they had seen to have been so provoked had twos SSS have T-tes, and her S and her NTS. It was a pity that they would never be able to find out. Uncle He, my hand hurts. Gu Xingyin shouted with a frown. He Junyan loosened his grip on Gu Xingyin's hand, but he still held it tightly. It was as if he was afraid that if he let go, something would happen to his precious treasure that he had raised. He was really scared now. What if that girl named Su Qing had gotten her way? What would happen to his Qing? He didn't dare to think of that possibility at all. He was afraid that he would go crazy if he thought of it. Chapter 457. Uncle He? Gu Xingyin was a little puzzled. Just as they arrived at the parking lot, the man who had been pulling her forward suddenly stopped and hugged her tightly in his arms. She could sense the man's uneasiness, so she obediently let him hug her. But this place was not considered remote. There were already a few passers-by looking at them curiously. Thank goodness you're fine, He Junyan said in a low voice. Gu Xingyin comforted him this time. I'll be fine. Uncle He, don't forget that I'm trained. He Junyan was amused by her. Yes, yes, I know. My Qingqing is the best. Although he said that, he was already thinking about what kind of bodyguards he should find for Qingqing. After all, Su Qing was a minor. She did not cause any substantial harm to Su Keqing, so she was only sentenced to half a year of detention. However, the school would definitely not accept such a student again. In the end, Su Qing was expelled from school. The reason given by the school was that she had taken a leave of absence due to illness. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Li, also forbade the students from discussing this topic. Many students were concerned about the class monitor, but they could not get through to Su Qing's phone number and could not contact her. No one knew where she was. The only ones who knew the truth were the 6 girls who went on that adventure together. However, the homeroom teacher, Teacher Li, talked to them one by one and told them not to casually talk about this in school. Time passed by day. When Gu Xingyin turned 15, she finally graduated from junior high school and was about to enter senior high school. To He Junyan, this news wasn't very pleasant. Gu Xingyin attended a 4-person elite school. The difference was that she could attend day school in junior high school, but she had to stay on campus in senior high school. Ever since Gu Xingyin came to the He family at the age of 10, the longest time she had been apart from He Junyan was when he went on a business trip. Now, it would be an entire month before they could see each other again. He Junyan snapped out of his daze and laughed inwardly at himself. He was so used to being a stay-at-home dad that he could not bear to part with her for a month. On Gu Xingyin's 15th birthday, which was a week before high school started, He Junyan held a small birthday party for her. Instead of inviting his business partners, he invited Gu Xingyin's good friends and classmates. Wow! Qingqing, I knew your family was rich, but I didn't expect you to be so rich. Rose said exaggeratedly. That's right, Qing, this little nouveau riche, in the future, we have to exploit her well. The other girl who spoke was also one of the girls who went on the expedition together. Although that experience was frightening, it also gave them a sense of camaraderie, and they quickly became good friends. He Junyan did not make an appearance at the banquet for the youngsters. In this kind of situation, there were no parents around, so they could play freely. He even made an exception and allowed Gu Xingyin to drink some wine. Gu Xingyin decided to do something big while she was drunk. Otherwise, with He Junyan's slow personality, he would probably still be happily playing the role of dad. Youngsters were crazy when they played. By the time everything was over and Gu Xingyin instructed the butler to send her classmates home, it was already 1:00 in the morning. He Junyan did not sleep. He was afraid that the youngsters would go crazy and he would not feel at ease until he saw it for himself. Chapter 458. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was knocking on his door. Before he could open the door, the person outside pushed the door open and walked in. He Junyan didn't even need to look to know that Gu Xingyin was drunk. She wouldn't have done something so impolite when she was sober. As expected, Gu Xingyin walked in with a bottle of wine in her arms and 2 glasses in her hands. The moment she walked in, He Junyan smelled the strong scent of alcohol. How much did you drink? Little drunk cat. He Junyan just wanted to facepalm. Gu Xingyin just looked at him and giggled. Her steps were steady as she walked to the cabinet in the room. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to He Junyan. Uncle He, I'm so happy today. Come, let's have a toast. Before He Junyan could stop her, she had already picked up the glass in her hand and downed it in one gulp. He Junyan laughed. Red wine isn't meant to be drunk like that. Although he said that, he still downed the glass in his hand in one gulp. Gu Xingyin suddenly stared at him without blinking. Being stared at like that, He Junyan felt a strange feeling in his heart. Qingqing, is there something you need? Gu Xingyin nodded seriously. Uncle He, I have something important to tell you. Uncle He waited for her to say what it was, amused. In his eyes, the young lady was drunk. Not only were her cheeks as white as jade, but even the corners of her eyes were red. What could it be? She was probably just drunk talk. Gu Xingyin mysteriously took a step forward. The two of them were very close to each other. Her breath, mixed with the smell of alcohol, filled his territory. He Junyan suddenly felt his heart beat a little faster. Then he heard the young lady say, "Uncle He, close your eyes. Don't move." He Junyan closed his eyes as he wished. He wanted to see what this little drunkard was going to do. After that, he felt a warm and soft touch on his lips. He Junyan instinctively stuck out his tongue and licked it. It was very soft and had a hint of red wine. It made him want to taste more. Wait a minute. He suddenly realized what this was. Opening his eyes, He Junyan took a step back as if he had been scalded. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. He looked at Gu Xingyin with an inexplicable expression and asked, "Qingqing, what are you doing?" Gu Xingyin's eyes were filled with this man. "I'm kissing you. I like you, Uncle He." She pouted. "You used to ask me if I had someone I liked. It's you." As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head, He Junyan said sternly, "Su Keqing, do you know what you are saying? My He Junyan is your uncle." When he said this, he was resolute and decisive, as if he was telling Gu Xingyin, but also warning himself. He realized that he didn't feel disgusted when the girl he raised kissed him. He even had the thought of delving deeper. This wasn't right. Gu Xingyin said clearly, "I know you are my Uncle He. You raised me and I like you. We are not related by blood. Why can't we be together?" He Junyan closed his eyes and pointed at the door. "You are drunk, Qingqing. Get out of my room now." He didn't look at her. He didn't need to look to know that at this moment, his little girl must be looking at him with her big watery eyes. That expression was one that he couldn't refuse. He was afraid that if he saw it, he wouldn't be able to harden his heart. Chapter 459. Gu Xingyin looked at him sadly. "Uncle He, you don't like Qingqing?" He Junyan said coldly, "I like Qingqing, but it's the kind of love an elder has for a younger generation, not the kind you want." Gu Xingyin stood still for a while. She was almost sober now, so she said slowly, "All right, I'm sorry, Uncle He. Qingqing drank too much just now. Just treat it as me talking nonsense when I was drunk." He Junyan stood there, listening to Gu Xingyin's footsteps slowly walk away. The door closed, and the room returned to silence. He turned his head and looked at the empty room. Suddenly, he walked to the cabinet and picked up the wine that Gu Xingyin had placed on top of it. Without even using a wine glass, he took a big gulp of the wine. She's still young. She doesn't know what love is, and what love is between a man and a woman. He Junyan, she's still young. You're not young anymore. You can't bring her down this path of no return. That night, He Junyan did not sleep at all. Gu Xingyin, who was supposed to be awake the whole night, slept soundly instead. The next day, He Junyan was nowhere to be seen when she went downstairs. Gu Xingyin looked disappointed. She asked the busy person beside her, "Sister May, where did Uncle He go?" Sister May did not know what happened between the two of them, so she replied, "Sir said that there's an important project in the company these few days. It's very urgent. He might have to work overtime, so he might not be back for the next few days." "Oh." Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. He was hiding from her. Once He Junyan disappeared, he disappeared for a week. He did not appear in front of Gu Xingyin even when she started school. Before Gu Xingyin left, he looked back repeatedly with every step he took, showing his reluctance and grievance vividly. Even Sister May secretly complained that Sir was too much. After all, Miss was about to start school. Even if he took the time to send her off, it would have been nice. However, the truth was, Gu Xingyin asked, "System, how was my performance just now?" The system said, "Very vivid." Gu Xingyin smiled proudly. "That's right. I know him best. He said that he doesn't care about me, but he's probably paying attention to me somewhere now." The system, sure enough, less than 10 minutes after Gu Xingyin left, He Junyan appeared in front of Sister May. "Qingqing left?" Mei Jia nodded and couldn't help but say, "Sir, it would be great if you could come earlier. Miss has been waiting for you for a long time. When I saw her leave, she was very uncomfortable. He Jianghu said faintly, I'm not meeting her now for her own good. Mei Jia was a little baffled when she heard this. Could it be that Miss and Sir had a quarrel? She shook her head. As an employee, it was better for her not to get too involved in the main family's affairs. What's more, Miss and Sir had been together for so many years. She had seen their feelings for each other. How could they be estranged so easily? Just watch, everything will be fine soon. Gu Xingyin was like a fish in water in her new class. She didn't know that her every move was being watched by a certain man. He Jianghu looked at the photos. The girl in the photos was smiling like a flower and was talking intimately with a friend beside her. You little heartless girl. He Jianghu suddenly scolded as he watched. He was glad that Gu Xingyin's mood was not affected by what happened on the night of her birthday, but he also felt a little annoyed because of it. Looking at her, she didn't seem to care about what happened that day at all. As expected, those confessions were just nonsense said when she was drunk. To think that he took it so seriously. He felt an inexplicable sense of annoyance in his heart. Chapter 460. To Gu Xingyin, a month's time wasn't much. After completing so many missions, time didn't mean much to her. But to He Jianghu, it was different. This was the first time he had been away from Gu Xingyin for so long. Even though he had been paying attention to Gu Xingyin's movements, he couldn't help but wonder if Qingqing was being bullied in a place I can't see. Would she have no one to talk to if she was wronged? Thinking of this, He Jianghu wanted to grit his teeth. That heartless brat. It's been so long and he hasn't even called back. Is he really waiting for me, his uncle, to take the initiative to contact him? As a parent with authority, He Jianghu, would never do something like that. However, on Gu Xingyin's first holiday in high school, she walked out of school with a few friends and immediately saw that familiar car. My family is here to pick me up. I'll get going first. Bye-bye. She happily ran to the car and shouted, Uncle He. The little girl couldn't hide the surprise on her face. He Jianghu reflexively revealed a gentle smile. Then, he quickly remembered something and said seriously, I happen to have something to do near your school today. I remembered that you guys were on holiday, so I came to pick you up. Gu Xingyin snickered in her heart, but on the surface, she said knowingly, I know. It's on the way. This man really cared about his face. He Jianghu looked at the smile on her face and gritted his teeth. Let's go. Uncle will take you to eat first. The two of them arrived at one of the more famous restaurants in Jianghu city. He Jianghu familiarly ordered Gu Xingyin's favorite dishes. Gu Xingyin propped up her chin and looked at this man without blinking. Sigh, other than being a little slow, this man was perfect in all other aspects. After He Jianghu finished ordering, he saw that the little girl opposite him was looking at him. He couldn't help but smile and teased, What's wrong? It's only been a month and you don't recognize Uncle He anymore? Gu Xingyin stuck her tongue out mischievously. I'm just saying that Uncle He is becoming more and more handsome. He Jianghu glared at him. You even dare to tease your uncle. You're really, Mr. He. A pleasantly surprised voice came from behind them. Gu Xingyin looked behind her. It was a woman wearing an off-the-shoulder gown. The fitting cut of the gown accentuated her slender figure. She wore a pair of white high heels on her feet. Her hair was loosely tied up, and she had a generous temperament. She was a very beautiful woman. Gu Xingyin knew who she was. She was one of the many women who liked He Jianghu. However, Su Keqing shouldn't have known. She looked at the woman in confusion and asked, Uncle He, who is this? He Jianghu was at a loss for words. This woman was the daughter of a company in Jianghu city. The company's CEO had always admired He Jianghu and had expressed his desire for a marriage alliance many times. However, He Jianghu had always rejected him. The last time he was suddenly confessed to by Gu Xingyin, his heart was in a mess. In a daze, he actually thought of finding a woman to try this trick on. Coincidentally, the CEO had suggested that the two of them meet. He didn't refuse. But speaking of which, the two of them had only met once. Jianghu realized that he had no interest in her at all. However, this woman didn't seem to think that way. Chapter 461. Upon hearing Gu Xingyi's words, the woman instinctively looked over. The moment she laid eyes on Gu Xingyi, a trace of shock flashed across her eyes. This girl was so exquisite. Women's innate desire to compare made her unconsciously use her most critical gaze when dealing with outstanding members of the same sex. However, the woman helplessly realized that there was nothing she could find fault with this girl's facial features. Looking at how intimate she was with Jianghu, then looking at her age, the woman quickly realized who she was. She originally wanted to greet Gu Xingyi cordially. After all, it was said that Jianghu doted on this little princess very much. However, Jianghu's words made her dispel that thought. Jianghu said as if he was trying to hide something, the eldest daughter of the Dingshan Group. I have worked with the CEO of the Dingshan Group before. He didn't even give a basic introduction. When he said this, his eyes were only on the girl opposite him, as if he was afraid that she would misunderstand. The woman suddenly felt unhappy. She felt that their meeting last time had been very pleasant, and there was even a possibility that they could have gone further. She felt that Jianghu was also very satisfied with her, but today, he deliberately distanced himself from her so clearly. There could only be one reason. She looked at Gu Xingyi. She was indeed as pampered as the rumors said. Jianghu was probably afraid that this girl wouldn't be able to accept this at the moment. The woman suddenly laughed. This must be Qingqing. I heard Jianghu mention you before. You are indeed a beautiful little princess. I hope that we can get along well in the future. Jianghu frowned when he heard this. When did he and this woman become so close? To the extent that they were calling each other by their names? After all, her father was his senior, so Jianghu restrained himself from embarrassing her. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if Su Keqing didn't think too much. Gu Xingyi decided to throw a little tantrum. Humph, who told you to attract some rotten peach blossoms outside? Her face quickly fell and she looked straight at Jianghu. Uncle He, what do you mean by getting along well in the future? Are you going to find me an aunt? I don't want it. The young lady's expression was unusually ugly. Jianghu could even see that her eyes were brimming with tears when she asked that question. Jianghu opened his mouth, but the woman beside him had already taken the opportunity to speak. Aya, Qingqing, why are you so insensible? Your uncle He is of age, and he lacks someone who understands him well. Besides, you can have one more person who loves you, right? Gu Xingyi's reaction was to get up and run outside. By the time Jianghu reacted, she had already run out. He stood up and was about to chase after her when he saw the woman still standing by the side. Miss Tang, I thought my intentions were clear enough. I don't think the two of us are suitable for each other. I hope you won't say anything that will cause misunderstandings in the future, he said coldly and chased after Gu Xingyi. The woman was left standing there, dumbfounded. After a while, she stomped her feet and left. Gu Xingyi did not run far. When Jianghu ran out, he saw her squatting in a corner. Qingqing. He walked over to her side. The girl stood up, revealing an expressionless face. Jianghu's heart skipped a beat. Qingqing had cried and laughed in front of him before, but she had never shown such a dead expression. Chapter 462. Qingqing, let me explain. Jianghu didn't know why, but when he saw Gu Xingyi like this, he actually panicked. You don't have to explain anything to me, Uncle He. Gu Xingyi raised her head and said seriously, who you want to find and what kind of life you want to live is your own business. It has nothing to do with me. You've taken care of me for so many years in the He family. I'm already indebted to you. If I still want to tell you what to do with your life, I really don't know what's good for me. Jianghu frowned. Qingqing, what are you saying? Gu Xingyi smiled. It's the truth. I won't be willful anymore. I won't get in the way of Uncle He's matters anymore. He Junyan looked at Gu Xingyin and only felt anger burning in his heart. What did she mean by, his life has nothing to do with me? What did she mean by, I'm indebted to her for taking care of me? What did she mean by, I won't get in the way? This mouth that used to sweetly call him Uncle He, why would it spit out such heartless and cold words? How could he Junyan, allow that? After she filled him with every little detail of his life, how could she act like nothing had happened? How could she just ignore him like that? Your mind is filled with impulsiveness right now. I won't talk to you anymore. Be good, let's go eat. Uncle will take you home after that. Gu Xingyin didn't want him to take her home with him. She had to force this man to see his heart clearly today. Uncle He, I'm no longer a child. I have my own consciousness and the right to choose my life. After I turn 18, I will take back what my parents left me and leave far away. I won't bother you or disturb your life anymore. Without a burden like me, you should be able to. When He Junyan heard the last part, his face darkened. He looked at Gu Xingyin coldly. After you turn 18, take the Su family's assets and leave? Leave far away? He grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand, opened the car door and threw her in. He sat in the driver's seat and drove all the way back to the villa. Sir and Miss, you're back. Sister May greeted them with a smile and saw He Junyan angrily grabbing Gu Xingyin and going upstairs. The door was slammed shut with a bang, causing Sister May to tremble. What was going on? Sir was clearly very happy when he went to pick up Mississippi. Sister May looked worriedly in the direction of the master bedroom on the second floor. Gu Xingyin was flung onto the bed by He Junyan. She could actually empathize with He Junyan now. No matter who it was, if a child that they had painstakingly raised for so many years said such selfish and rude words, they would be furious. Uncle He. She looked uneasily at the man with a terrifying aura in front of her. He Junyan had always been a gentle gentleman in front of Su Keqing. She had never seen such a scary side of He Junyan. He Junyan smiled coldly. Go on, go on. Tell me all your plans for the future and what you want to do with me. If you don't want to have anything to do with me, then tell me all about it. A guilty look flashed across Gu Xingyin's face, but she seemed to have thought of something. She turned her face away stubbornly. That's right. Didn't my existence get in the way of your good fortune? When you get married and have children in the future, I'm afraid you can't wait to get rid of me as a burden. On the other hand, the more she spoke, the more confident she became. Originally, she was extremely guilty, but as she spoke, she began to cry. Chapter 463. He Junyan's anger was mostly dissipated by her cries. But there was still half of it left. He didn't comfort the girl who was crying. He just stood by the side and looked at her coldly. I didn't know that He Junyan, had been so devoted to you for so many years just to raise an ingrate like you. Gu Xingyin stared at him with wide eyes and said angrily, I'm not an ingrate. He Junyan said coldly, I raised you for so many years. The first thing you thought of was to leave the He family and leave me when you came of age. You told me. If that's not an ingrate, then what is? Gu Xingyin widened her eyes. You're the one who despises me for interrupting your life. He Junyan got angry when he heard her say that. He pulled her up from the bed and they were very close to each other. He gritted his teeth and said, when did I say that you were interrupting my life? When did I despise you? Su Keqing, do you even have a heart? Haven't I treated you well enough? Do you not trust me that much? Gu Xingyin was a little confused. But you don't like me. You'll have to marry a wife and have your own children in the future. Then you won't think that way. I'll meet someone else and spend the rest of my life with him. She couldn't say the rest of her words because He Junyan suddenly bent down and nibbled on her lips. This was the second time He Junyan kissed her, but it was the first time he followed his heart and sucked on this little mouth that kept saying things that he loved and hated. He adopted Su Keqing when he was 23 years old. 5 years had passed and he had never had a woman by his side. So this was what kissing felt like. He Junyan closed his eyes and tightened his arms around her waist, pulling her closer to him. His tongue pried open Gu Xingyin's lips and teeth and invited her to indulge in it with him. Gu Xingyin didn't understand why he was suddenly enlightened. But before she could figure it out, she was kissed into a daze by him. She clearly had the memories of every world, so why was this man's kissing technique even more familiar than hers? By the time He Jianyan finally let go of her reluctantly, the woman in his arms had a pair of sparkling eyes and her red lips were tender and alluring. "Su Keqing, you provoked me first," He Jianyan suddenly said. Gu Xingyin seemed to be in a daze as she looked at her blankly. He Jianyan's voice sounded like he was gritting his teeth. "You made me lose interest in other women. You made me have feelings for the child I raised with my own hands. Su Keqing, He Jianyan, admit defeat. Since you have the guts to provoke me, you should be prepared to bear the consequences." Gu Xingyin's face turned red as soon as he heard his words. "Uncle He, you mean, you like me too?" By the time she asked the last question, her face was already filled with joy. Su Keqing had been spoiled too much by He Jianyan. There was no reason for her to beat around the bush to get what she wanted. He Jianyan looked at her excited expression and sighed. She had considered too little. She had dared to confess without hesitation based on her feelings. He only hoped that she wouldn't regret it in the future. He Jianyan looked at her seriously. "Qingqing, Uncle He will ask you one last time. You are still young. Being with me may not be as wonderful as you think it is. Perhaps you will meet a man who will move your heart even more in the future. If you really decide to be with me, then Uncle He will not give you the chance to regret it." Chapter 464. Gu Xingyin's answer was to tiptoe and kiss him gently on the lips. Although she looked shy, she was more determined and full of admiration for the person in front of her. "Uncle He, I know you think I'm young and immature. I can't prove anything to you now. I, Su Keqing, only know that after my parents left, Uncle He was the person who doted on me the most and treated me the best in the world. He was also the person I liked the most and wanted to be with for the rest of my life." He Jianyan was moved. Gu Xingyin continued, "As for whether I regret it or not, the word regret does not exist in my dictionary. Sister May found that after only one night, the originally stiff atmosphere of the gentleman and the young lady had returned to their former state. No, Sister May felt that the relationship between the two of them was different from before. It seemed that Mr. Li doted on Miss even more. Although it still felt strange, Sister May was very happy. She had been worried for the whole night, afraid that there would be a gap between Mr. Li and Mississippi. Sure enough, they had such a good relationship. How could they be estranged? Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief after the two of them talked things out. However, for the two of them who had just established their relationship, the short high school holidays were really short. "Uncle He, I can't bear to leave you." Gu Xingyin hugged He Jianyan's arm and acted coquettishly. She had to go to school tomorrow. He Jianyan pinched her nose. "You're acting coquettishly again. You're getting worse." Gu Xingyin giggled. "Children who are pampered don't grow up. With Uncle He pampering me, I'm not afraid." She glanced around. Seeing that there was no one around, she quickly stretched her neck and kissed He Jianyan on the cheek. He Jianyan wanted to chide her, but when he saw her secretly happy and secretive expression, he laughed first. The two of them were so sweet, but they didn't want their actions to be seen by others. Su Qing's eyes widened and she covered her mouth as she watched this unbelievable scene. So, Su Keqing and her uncle had such a relationship. After the two of them left, Su Qing stood up. The past half a year had been quite miserable for her. Being detained for half a year wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the nightmares that followed him like a shadow. She still couldn't imagine what had happened that night in the factory. She had only wanted to use that rumor to teach Su Keqing a lesson. Who knew that she would attract the real, those things? For this reason, Su Qing even began to believe in Buddhism. Every day before going to bed, she would recite Buddhist scriptures for at least half an hour to calm her mind. Fortunately, after coming out, Su Qing's family had some connections and spent some money to send her to another school. None of the new teachers and classmates knew about her, and they were all very enthusiastic about her. She could be considered to have started a new life. She had thought that she, her previous school, and Su Keqing would no longer have anything to do with her. Who would have thought that she would run into this by chance? Su Qing was a little excited. Many thoughts ran through her mind. Su Keqing's surname was Su, but she clearly called that person Uncle He. She and that man were not uncle and nephew at all. Then, she thought about what she had seen today and the news about students hooking up with rich men that was often reported on the internet. Su Qing felt that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. After all, she had been frightened earlier. Su Qing only secretly remembered this matter in her heart. Once again, she looked in the direction where there was no one, and slowly walked in the opposite direction. Chapter 465. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had passed. Qingqing, you're going to be an adult soon. He Junyan hugged Gu Xingyin and whispered into her ear. Gu Xingyin could feel the hot breath beside her ear. She understood the meaning behind the man's words. Once she was an adult and fattened up, she would be ready to eat. She didn't find it strange that her lover had needs for her. However, this man was amazing to be able to hold himself back for so long. The 31-year-old man was in the prime of his life. The impulsiveness of his youth had faded away, and his entire person was exuding an elegant charm. Gu Xingyin turned around and sized this man up. He didn't look old. He had changed into casual clothes and appeared on campus. People would even mistake him for a classy senior. What are you looking at? He Junyan saw her staring at him without blinking. Gu Xingyin raised her hand and wrapped it around his neck. She smiled proudly. I'm thinking, how did I manage to ensnare such an outstanding man? I, Su Keqing, am so lucky. She, Gu Xingyin, was also so lucky. He Junyan lowered his head and gazed deeply at her. No, Qingqing, I'm the lucky one to have met you. This silly girl only had eyes for himself. Didn't she realize that as she grew older, her exquisite facial features would fully develop and there would be more and more gazes on her body? Yes, it must be a gift from the heavens for us to meet. Gu Xingyin meant what he said. The fact that she was created, the fact that she could meet her lover during the mission, and the fact that she could meet him again and again in the reincarnation cycle was really a blessing from the heavens. When it's your coming-of-age ceremony, I'll give you a big present. Gu Xingyin threw herself into his arms and whispered into his ear. He Junyan's eyes were full of smiles. Yes, I'll be waiting for you, Qingqing. Gu Xingyin's birthday was during the holidays after the college entrance exams. They would have a long and sweet vacation. However, there were people who didn't want them to have an easy time. A week before the college entrance examination, a large number of anonymous posts appeared on the school forum. The contents of the posts were all the same: a certain tall, long-legged, fair-skinned, beautiful young lady from a good family background was actually a fake young lady. She had no blood relations with the wealthy bachelor from Jinhua City who was said to be her guardian. The post didn't say anything about the girl, but it just so happened that it attracted people's attention. She had fair skin, a beautiful face, and a good family background. She even had a close guardian. The only thing missing from the post was Gu Xingyin's name. Regardless of whether this post was true or not, if it was really an 18-year-old girl who was facing the college entrance examination, she would definitely be in a terrible fix because of this. It would definitely have a huge impact on her future exams. The sinister intentions of the person behind this were obvious. Is it Su Qing? The first person that came to Gu Xingyin's mind was Su Qing. After all, as Su Keqing, she had been staying in school for the past few years and had no enemies at all. The only person who could have a grudge against her was Su Qing. Moreover, Gu Xingyin had learned from the system that Su Qing knew about her relationship with He Junyan. The system denied it this time. It's not Su Qing. The person behind this was beyond Gu Xingyin's expectations. It was actually the young lady from a certain corporation whom she had only met once and had never heard of again. Chapter 466. Gu Xingyin checked and found out that the woman had no evidence at all when she posted the post. She said that the two of them had an unusual relationship, but she was just spouting nonsense. Her goal was to disgust Gu Xingyin and make her fail the college entrance examination. Gu Xingyin was silent for a while after she found out. Then, she said to the system, "I remember that I only met her once, right?" The system nodded. "Yes, the only time we met was 3 years ago, and we didn't get along." Gu Xingyin couldn't believe it. "So she has been holding a grudge against me until now? And she wants to ruin me during the college entrance exam?" After she said this, she laughed to herself. She carefully sorted out her thoughts and helplessly found that the unhappiness between the two of them seemed to be caused by a certain man. She clicked on the forum again and found that it was indeed exploding. Meng Meng de Li Zi, no way, I see her usually delicate appearance. She's actually that kind of person. She's really good at pretending. Qianwei Hua Zui, don't talk nonsense if you don't know. I've been classmates with her for 6 years. Look at her temperament and upbringing. She's originally a pampered young lady. Only she knows the intentions of the person who posted this. Gu Yunka, I agree with the person above. Temperament can't lie. Hua hua, hee hee, there's a bunch of people above. Don't tell me they're the water army sent by someone? Filthy Li Wuxin, I'm just a bystander who doesn't know the truth. Please tell me, who is this post talking about? Gu Xingyin casually glanced at the posts. There were all kinds of people who were watching a show and mocking her. However, most of them were just passing by. After all, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this post was fake. She sorted out her thoughts and was about to reply when she suddenly saw an anonymous post. Unlike the previous posts that blindly slandered her, this post was very detailed. From the girl's family to her relationship with her so-called guardian, their daily intimate interactions, and so on. In the end, the poster even said that she had seen the girl kissing her so-called guardian with her own eyes. The poster even attached a photo. There was no clear face in it, but most people who were familiar with her could still recognize her. When this post came out, it really caused an uproar in the forum. Unlike the groundless accusations above, this post was completely based on facts, and the key point was that she had a picture of herself. Sister likes to eat meat, fuck, I was so sure that everything was fake. So there's a big move behind the scenes? Sue, that's impossible. She's definitely not someone who's anonymous. You, if you have the guts, come out openly. What's the point of hiding and slandering others? Blurry rabbit, mummy, the water in school is so deep. I want to go home. When Gu Xingyin saw this post, he deleted the reply that he was editing. Different opponents should have different ways of responding. That's right. The second anonymous post was posted by Su Qing. After all, she had stayed in the junior high school for a few years. Of course, she paid attention to the forum. When she accidentally opened it today and saw the full screen of posts, she could tell at a glance that the person in the post was Su Keqing. Chapter 467. She had always kept in mind what she had seen a few years ago. But the haunted factory had really scared her. She didn't know why, but Su Qing felt that nothing good would happen to her whenever she met Su Keqing. So, she had always buried that incident in her heart until she saw this post today. Su Qing thought that this was a gift from God for her to take revenge on Su Keqing. There were so many posts on the forum. If she secretly attached one of them, she would definitely not be discovered. If Su Keqing wanted to investigate, the first person she would find would be the person who started the post. Moreover, Su Qing and Su Keqing had not interacted for 3 years. Su Keqing would definitely not think of her. Unfortunately, her idea was good, but she didn't know that Gu Xingyin had the system. The other person who posted the post looked at Su Qing's anonymous post and turned pale. Lei Tingting didn't expect that she would hit the nail on the head. She just wanted to teach Su Keqing a lesson to vent her anger from being humiliated that year. She felt disgusted at the thought of He Zhenyan having that kind of relationship with the adopted Su Keqing. On the other hand, she looked at the post happily. Su Keqing, let's see if you can still focus on your college entrance exams after such a big thing happened. Many people who guessed the identity of the person in the post were waiting for Gu Xingyin to respond. Unfortunately, they were disappointed. Gu Xingyin acted as if she didn't see the post. She ate her meals and studied as usual. She didn't seem to be affected at all. Could it be that she didn't know about this at all? Those who knew her wanted to tell her, but how could they say it? There were a few popular posts on the forum, and the main character seemed to be you. She didn't even mention a name. Moreover, the school was full of students. Most of them had pure minds. They felt that it was a good thing that Gu Xingyin didn't know about this. At least her mood wouldn't be affected and she wouldn't fail the college entrance exams. Thus, while Su Qing and Lei Dingding were waiting anxiously, Gu Xingyin calmly finished her college entrance exams. She wasn't affected at all. When Gu Xingyin finally, coincidentally, found out about this matter, the popularity had almost died down, and most people were focusing on the results. That's how humans are. If it's something that has nothing to do with me, I'll just watch the show when I'm interested. After that, I'll do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with me. At this moment, He Jianyan also found out about the school forum. Why didn't you tell me? He bit her lips as if punishing her. Gu Xingyin looked at him angrily, as if she was dissatisfied with his behavior. After hearing his words, she casually said, "It's not a big deal. Besides, the post is right. You and I have that kind of relationship." He Jianyan's expression was serious. "Of course it's different. You and I are in love with each other, and we are in a serious relationship. You, Su Keqing, are the eldest daughter of the Su family with a net worth of hundreds of millions. Although I, He Jianyan, have a modest net worth, I can't afford to keep you as a mistress." How could he allow someone to tarnish the reputation of the girl he treated like a treasure? Gu Xingyin burst out laughing. She really didn't care about this. That night, a certain school forum was attacked by an unknown hacker. All the posts were deleted, and the entire forum was wiped clean. Because Gu Xingyin's incident had happened a long time ago, and the hacker's attack was large-scale, no one connected it to her. Just like that, this matter sank to the bottom of the ocean. Chapter 468. Gu Xingyin's coming-of-age ceremony at the age of 18 was very grand. He Jianyan had put in a lot of effort to give her a perfect birthday party. He wanted everything to be the best. Today, in front of all the guests, I, He Jianyan, as Miss Su Keqing's guardian, will return everything that belongs to Miss Su Keqing in perfect condition under everyone's witness, He Jianyan said after his speech. Many of the people present had already understood what he meant. Most of the people present knew Su Keqing's identity. Many of them were even good friends of Su Keqing's parents. These people were very gratified by He Jianyan's actions. However, there were some people who had other intentions who were truly surprised. They had previously discussed in private that the Su couple had entrusted their daughter and their family assets to someone else. It was no different from sending a piece of delicious meat to the mouth of a wild beast for him to keep. Most likely, it would be a one-way trip. They didn't expect He Jianyan to be such a gentleman. He Jianyan had a lawyer behind him. He signed a thick stack of documents and handed them to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin looked through them carefully one by one and signed her name. She could have chosen not to look at them and chosen to believe He Jianyan. However, she saw how serious this man was. If she really did that, she wouldn't be trusting this man. Instead, she would be letting down his painstaking efforts. He Jianyan had purposely handed over the Su family's assets to her in front of all the business leaders in Jinhua City. This was to tell everyone that the real head of the Su family was back. Of course, Gu Xingyin couldn't treat this lightly. However, there was more than one unexpected thing that happened today. After Gu Xingyin signed the documents, all the guests stood up and applauded. Suddenly, the lights in the hall dimmed. The light pink lights looked especially dreamy in such an environment. Just as everyone was wondering what had happened, He Jianyan suddenly took out a small box from his pocket. Gu Xingyin instantly understood what he was going to do. Although they had been married for a long time, she couldn't help but cover her mouth in surprise. In front of everyone, He Jianyan knelt down on one knee before Gu Xingyin and opened the gift box in his hand. An exquisite diamond ring shone brilliantly under the light. Today, in front of all the guests, I have an even more important matter that I have yet to mention. He looked at Gu Xingyin seriously, his eyes full of affection. Qingqing, will you marry me? Ah! Some of the women couldn't help but exclaim. Everyone was stunned by this turn of events. What kind of development was this? If they didn't hear wrongly, President He was Miss Sue's guardian, right? Those conspiracy theorists thought that they instantly understood what He Jianyan was thinking. So that was the case. No wonder he handed over the Su Group's shares so readily. It turned out that he had a backup plan. Brilliant, truly brilliant. Even the eldest daughter of the Su family had become He Jianyan's. Would the Su family be far away? Gu Xingyin and He Jianyan couldn't care less about what other people thought. At this moment, they only had each other in their eyes. Gu Xingyin couldn't stop smiling as she extended her hand to He Jianyan. I'm willing. How romantic. A girl shouted excitedly and took the lead in clapping her hands. The guests snapped back to their senses. No matter what they were thinking, they all smiled and gave their blessings to the couple. Chapter 469. He Jianyan looked at her insincere expression and smiled. Gu Xingyin saw that he was neatly dressed in his home clothes and that there was a book on the bedside table. She knew that he was just teasing her. She immediately changed her expression. She frowned and tears welled up in her eyes. This change shocked He Jianyan. He knew in his heart that Gu Xingyin was most likely faking it, but he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. He bent down and asked, "What's wrong, Qingqing?" Gu Xingyin's eyes were teary. It hurts, guilt flashed across He Jianyan's eyes. He knew that he had lost control last night. The girl in front of him was still very inexperienced. Unfortunately, the self-control that he was so proud of was nothing in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin enjoyed the treatment of a queen. She washed up and dressed while He Jianyan waited on her without complaint. After everything was done, she said coquettishly, "I'm so tired. I don't want to move." He Jianyan didn't say another word and carried her down the stairs. He faced Sister May, who had just entered the room. Sister May had seen He Jianyan propose to Gu Xingyin with her own eyes last night. At that time, she was really shocked. However, after one night, she thought it through. Anyway, Sir and Miss weren't related by blood. The two of them had always been so close. If they didn't get together like this, when Sir got married in the future, the bride might not be able to accept it. After all, she had watched Gu Xingyin grow up. Sister May naturally felt sorry for her more than others. She accepted this kind of thing without any hesitation. Now that she saw He Jianyan carrying Gu Xingyin down the stairs, Sister May was experienced. How could she not know what had happened between the two of them? Sir was too anxious. Miss had just turned 18. Sister May gave He Jianyan a reproachful look. He Jianyan took the blame with a bitter smile. Who would have thought that it was actually the obedient girl in his arms who had seduced him last night? However, looking at the two of them now, no one would believe it. President He, just accept it. Gu Xingyin saw that Sister May did not show any difference, and she was happy in her heart. Although in the mission world, the only person she really cares about is her lover, Sister May has taken care of her for so many years. It is also a happy thing to be able to get her blessing. The two of them finished their breakfast sweetly. Anyone who saw them would feel their teeth ache. Sister May had already left the restaurant tactfully. When she left, she still had a gratified look on her face. The more Sir dotes on Miss, ah no, she will soon be Madam. The more relieved she felt. Gu Xingyin's college entrance examination results were released. Unsurprisingly, she ranked first. With her grades, she could get into any school in the country. However, under He Jianyan's strong request, she still chose to study finance at a university in Jianghu City. One of them was close to home, and the two of them were at the peak of their love, so they couldn't bear to part. The other reason was that this school's finance major was one of the top in the country. It was not a disgrace to Gu Xingyin's grades. Everything went smoothly. The only accident happened when Gu Xingyin was in her 3rd year of university. She found out that she was pregnant. Hence, the wedding that was originally planned after graduation was brought forward. For the first time, Gu Xingyin experienced what it felt like to get married with a baby. Chapter 470. Fortunately, He Junyan was fast enough to prevent her from holding a wedding while pregnant. Gu Xingyin took a leave of absence from school and stayed at home to be her fragile object. She was treated like a treasure by the overly nervous He Junyan and Sister Mei every day. How was Su Qing doing at this time? She had taken a year off from school because she was detained, so she was 1 year younger than Gu Xingyin and the rest. Gu Xingyin didn't forget the kindness of the forum posts back then. She didn't repay it then because it wasn't the right time. The 2nd year after Gu Xingyin's college entrance examination, which was also the year of Su Qing's college entrance examination. A week before the college entrance examination, Su Qing's school forum was flooded with posts. There was only one content: Su Qing from grade 12 class 1 had been detained for half a year for deliberately murdering a classmate. In just one night, Su Qing's life had undergone an earth-shattering change. Her boyfriend of a year broke up with her because he couldn't accept that his other half was a vicious girl. Whether walking on the streets or in school, people were pointing at her, their eyes full of surprise, disdain, and even fear. Her father's promotion was also blown. The originally foolproof transfer was suddenly removed because her father had raised a daughter who had been in prison, and the higher-ups doubted his ability. However, no matter how hard she tried, no one could find out who posted these posts, even if they were extremely skilled hackers. What followed was a night of nightmares. Su Qing seemed to have returned to those days. She didn't dare to close her eyes at all. Once she did, those things would follow her like a shadow, making her unable to sleep every night. She didn't sleep well for a whole week. In such a state, her college entrance examination results were imaginable. It was a mess. Su Qing almost went crazy. In the end, she went to a 3rd-rate school. What Gu Xingyin had done was just to return what she had done to him in its entirety. Their lives were destined to never cross again in the future. As for Ms. Ladingding, Gu Xingyin also sent a small gift. On the eve of her engagement, Ms. Ladingding's fiancé received an anonymous email. In those photos, Ladingding, the noble and generous young lady, was participating in various parties abroad. Those gatherings were very messy. Striptease and one-night stands were all child's play. There were even. Gu Xingyin was not in the mood to pay attention to what happened next. He only knew that Ladingding's fiancé broke off the engagement with her. Although the photos were not released to the public for the sake of the two families, Ladingding's reputation was spread among the upper class. At the very least, no other young master would dare to marry such a woman. During the first snowfall of winter, Gu Xingyin gave birth to a daughter safely in the hospital. He Junyan was a man in his 30s. He was so happy that he almost cried as he held the baby in his arms. Qingqing, look, this is our little baby. He sat beside Gu Xingyin and looked at the woman and the baby. His wife was sleeping peacefully on the bed, a satisfied and happy smile on her tired face. Beside her was the baby, who was sleeping soundly with her fingers sucked. He was at peace and leaned over to plant a kiss on each of their faces. These were the two most important women in his life. Chapter 471. This was an extremely beautiful place. Every green leaf seemed to twinkle with a lustrous light, and every flower was always in its most blossoming state. This was the pure land of the fantasy continent, the place where the elves resided, Starlight Forest. There was a person lying on a swing made of intertwined starlight flowers, taking a nap. Her long, snow-white skirt extended from the swing and fell to the ground. If one looked closely, the skirt was embroidered with countless starlight flowers using silver thread. When the wind blew, it was as if endless starlight was falling. Looking up, the first thing that came into view was a head of light green hair that was lazily scattered. The top of her head was bound by a gorgeous and exquisite starlight flower crown. When one looked up, it was as if even the wind had stopped breathing. This was an indescribably beautiful face. It was a beauty that even the poets of the magical continent couldn't describe with words of praise. It was a charm that the sculptors couldn't capture no matter how meticulous they were. Suddenly, those long eyelashes trembled slightly, and the owner sitting on the swing slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, the plants around her seemed to have sensed something and instantly bloomed enthusiastically. "Your Majesty, you're awake. Your Majesty, what a pair of beautiful eyes they were." The light green pupils were like the clearest and most flawless jade pools, containing endless vitality and vitality. The owner of those eyes was the ruler of the fantasy continent's starlight forest, the queen of the elves, Helena. Gu Xingyin gently raised her hand with a smile, and a light green halo rose from her palm. Then, it turned into specks of starlight that fell on the surrounding plants. Those plants that had received the gift of nature magic from the elven queen bowed to Gu Xingyin in gratitude. Gu Xingyin sorted out the memories that the system had just transmitted to her. Elven Queen Helena, the first elf born from the elven mother tree, the sacred object of the elves. She was born in her adult form and was the most powerful guardian of the starlight forest. She was also one of the top powerhouses in the entire fantasy continent. She was the queen of the elven clan, who had incomparably powerful battle prowess. She was also recognized as the #1 beauty in the entire fantasy continent. However, such a powerful and beautiful elf queen was only a character that made people sigh with regret in a certain story. That story, to put it simply, was about a human girl who carried the protagonist aura. She had good luck all the way and activated countless cheats. In the end, she became a supreme master and had countless harems. In the process of her killing spree, one of her lovers was poisoned by the fire poison of hell's lava. In the entire fantasy continent, only the elven race's holy tree, the elven mother tree, could cure her. In order to save her lover, she transformed herself and sneaked into the starlight forest. She got close to the youngest elder of the elf clan, Alan, and sneaked into the elf's sacred ground. In the end, she disappeared with the elf's sacred tree. She had left, but the entire elf clan had fallen into a great calamity. Alan knew that he had made a big mistake and was filled with remorse. He committed suicide in front of all the elves to apologize. The root of the elf clan was the elven mother tree. Without the elven mother tree, the entire starlight forest withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The elves also began to show different degrees of weakness and aging. The entire elf clan was in imminent danger. At this time, as the elven queen, Helena made a huge decision for the entire elf clan. Chapter 472. The elven queen was born from the elven mother tree after countless years of nurturing. She was the first elf between heaven and earth. As long as the fantasy magic continent was not destroyed, she would be an immortal existence. In a sense, she could replace the elven mother tree. Therefore, after Helena studied countless elven magic books, she prayed to the goddess of nature in the elven holy land and sacrificed herself to become the new elven mother tree. She saved the entire elven race and even the entire starlight forest, but gave up on herself. Gu Xingyin finished sorting out the plot and sighed to herself. In the original plot, the elven race did not have a good ending. Because of the elven queen, the entire elven race hated that human girl and even started a war that spread across the entire continent. However, no matter how strong the elven race was, they could not defeat someone with a protagonist aura. In the end, the entire elven race suffered heavy losses and had to seal the starlight forest to recover. When Gu Xingyin came to the elven queen, there were still 1,000 years before the birth of the protagonist aura girl, She Lily. System, she has the protagonist aura. Isn't she the protagonist of this world? Gu Xingyin asked with some doubt. The system's calm voice was somewhat disdainful. How could she be considered a protagonist? She just happened to obtain something that could forcefully steal the luck of others to replenish herself. That's why she was so lucky. Host, haven't you noticed that everyone who went against her ended up very miserably? That's because their luck was all stolen by her. The true children of fate are loved by the laws of the world. For example, the elven queen that Host lives in will not bring misfortune to others. On the contrary, the true protagonists will even benefit the people around them. Gu Xingyi nodded to express her understanding. Your Majesty, a new elf is about to be born in the Holy Land. A lithe female elf reported to Gu Xingyin with a smile. Gu Xingyin's expression froze. Calculating the time, Aliner, who was deceived by Shi Lily and ended up committing suicide, was born at this time. A smile appeared on her face. I'll go take a look. Our elf is finally coming out. Aliner's birth received the attention of the entire elven race because he was the second elf after Queen Helena to be born after 10,000 years of nurturing by the mother tree. All elves guessed that after he was born, he would definitely be an extremely powerful elf. When Gu Xingyin arrived at the elven sacred land, many elves who had heard about the elven mother tree's movements had already rushed over. Upon seeing Gu Xingyin, the elves all bowed to her. Queen. Your Majesty. Gu Xingyin nodded and walked to the front to look at the holy tree of the elves. Elves were born from the elven mother tree, and the potential of newborn elves was judged based on the length of time they were born. Elves were elves birth elves for ages for nurture? Of course, as the first elf in the fantasy continent, no one knew how long Gu Xingyin had been nurtured by the mother tree of the fairies. This little elf that had been nurtured for 10,000 years naturally received the blessings of all elves. The green radiance that had been lingering around the mother elven tree suddenly became unprecedentedly dazzling. The branches and leaves on her body gently trembled. On one of the branches, a huge flower bud slowly detached from the tree and fell to the ground.